Lin Yi might as well stay in the inn and cultivate his alchemy skills. In the notes of the refiner, Zhang Liju had detailed notes on the refiner's fire practitioner's mantra for the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. There weren't many mantras for each element, and the refiner's mantra was very simple and not complicated. It was just a mantra to convert the qi in the practitioner's body into the corresponding refiner's fire. As a result, a golden class practitioner could only become a golden class refiner at most, because it was limited by the level of qi one's body had. But in fact, due to the fact that a golden class practitioner's qi was limited, the practitioner's arts and refinement fire's arts weren't completely compatible with each other, and it would cause some errors and damage. It was basically impossible to become a golden class 7th level refiner with the strength of a golden class spiritual practitioner. Usually it would be good if they could reach golden class 1st or 2nd level, not even 3rd level was possible. Lin Yi was now a mystic and his starting point was considered quite high. Plus, Lin Yi's knowledge of medicinal properties was incomparable to others. Recipes were important to a refiner, but those who were limited to recipes, even if they were a mystic 1st level refiner, wouldn't be able to achieve much. This was because they didn't understand medicinal properties, and in a situation where there was a shortage of ingredients, they couldn't change the recipe as they pleased. Naturally, they were much weaker than those refiners who knew medicinal properties and could change the recipe on their own. Zhang Liju, on the other hand, was one of those refiners who could change the recipe on their own. According to the notes, Zhang Liju said that the qi gathering pill was originally a supreme level elixir, but he changed it into a 3rd level elixir. The medicinal properties weren't as strong as before, and everyone could only use one in their lifetime. It didn't have the same effect as the original qi gathering pill that could be used by sky-class cultivators, but the cost was much lower. The ingredients needed to make the real qi gathering pill could only be described as shocking. Lin Yi looked at the recipe and it gave Lin Yi a feeling that it wasn't just shocking, it was inexplicable. Many of the ingredients mentioned were things that Lin Yi had never heard of before. Looking at this, Lin Yi felt a little discouraged. Although he had a deep understanding of medicinal properties, these ingredients that he had never seen or even heard of, even if Lin Yi wanted to, he wouldn't be able to change them as he pleased. After all, Lin Yi didn't know what these ingredients were used for, and what effect they had in the elixir-making process. Naturally, he wouldn't be able to find a substitute for them. But no matter what, the recipe that Zhang Liju left behind was enough for Lin Yi to use for a while. Most of the ingredients that Zhang Liju had changed were common ingredients that could be easily bought from the market. Even if there were some rare ones, they could be grown in old Lin's herb garden. But on the high-level recipes that hadn't been changed, there were many ingredients that he had never seen before, such as the fire spirit's fruit. It made Lin Yi's eyes blur. Before practicing, Lin Yi was still planning to call old Lin to ask for his opinion, just like when he first started practicing the art of dragon mastery. He used the satellite phone to call old Lin and after a while the other side picked up. Old Lin's lazy voice came through the phone. Sup? I'm taking a nap right now. Did you find the fire spirit's fruit? Lin Yi was a little speechless. The old man cared about him more than anyone else, but he didn't care about him at all. He'd been gone for a couple of days now, and the old man hadn't even called to check up on him. Lin Yi didn't know if the old man was really that confident in him, thinking that he'd be fine. Not yet. I just arrived at a place called Ice Snow Town near the extreme north. According to the coordinates, the extreme north is right in front of the town, but I couldn't find a way out after a couple of directions. I was just about to try walking when it started snowing heavily. The visibility was too low, so I found an inn to stay in. I'll go check it out after the snow is over. Lin Yi explained his situation to old Lin in one breath. Chapter 1462. What's wrong, old man? What's wrong with the town? Do you know this place? Lin Yi asked curiously. Why does this name sound so familiar? I think I've heard it before. Old Lin frowned and repeated the name again. He suddenly said with some shock, could it be the location of that place? What place? Lin Yi was getting more and more confused. I hope I'm wrong. Old Lin shook his head. You're in the common world and I don't want you to get involved in the fights of other levels. That's not a place you should go and it's not a place you can go. I just want you to deal with things in Songshan calmly and then live a peaceful life. But now it seems like things aren't going as you wish. I can still control the range of the hidden houses, but now it seems like in some areas you're already out of my control. Old man, what are you talking about? Lin Yi still didn't understand what old Lin was talking about. Out of my control? It's that, the things you're in contact with right now are already out of my control. Old Lin said, if you run into any trouble, even I can't help you. But based on the current situation, you can't stop. What nonsense are you talking about? I say, old man, don't you feel embarrassed saying that? When did you help me? What did you say when I ran into trouble? You told me to go home and hide. When did you help me? Lin Yi finally understood what old Lin was saying. The old man was just putting on a show. He'd been able to deal with all the troubles he'd faced in the past with his skills. But now that the power behind these troubles had surfaced, the old man wasn't sure what to do. He couldn't keep up the act. I just want you to train, right? Old Lin smiled bitterly. But if you run into absolute danger, I can't just stand by and do nothing. I know. Lin Yi nodded, but people have to grow up, don't they? Since I'm already in this whirlpool of trouble, I can't avoid it anymore. And if I keep living under your wings, will never grow up. Well said. As old man Lin listened to Lin Yi's words, he felt as if he had returned to his youth. That's right, who hasn't encountered danger before? Hadn't he encountered it before? Didn't he still make it through? Although Lin Yi's current situation was a little troublesome, this little guy always did things unexpectedly. Maybe he could really make a name for himself. I say, old man, I called you because I have something important to say. You are sighing about life. Lin Yi said helplessly, can you wait for me to go back and sigh? All right. What's the matter? Say it, I'm listening. Old man Lin stopped sighing and asked. Other than Zhang Liju's medical notes and Skybolt Pig, I also got a chi gathering pill and a refiner's notes. I forgot to tell you about them, but since I have nothing better to do now, I'll study them. Lin Yi said. What? You got a chi gathering pill and a pill refiner's notes? Old Lin was so shocked that his jaw was about to drop. You're not joking with me, are you? Are you serious? Have I ever lied to you? Lin Yi was a little speechless. What's there to be surprised about? What's there to be surprised about? Chi gathering pill. That's an experience pill that can give you countless experience points. Old Lin was a little exasperated. Do you know what that means? I do, but isn't it only once per person? It's best if you use it when you're Earth class late phase peak. That way you'll be able to break through to Sky class. Lin Yi said. I'm still far from Sky class, what's there to be excited about? That's true, but it's still effective if you eat it now. It's just a bit of a waste. Old Lin said. Of course, the most important thing isn't the chi gathering pill but the refiner's notes. Do you know how few refiners are nowadays? Even I'm not a refiner. I know, but it's quite troublesome to practice. I was just about to ask you, should I go practice this? Lin Yi asked. Of course. Why don't you practice? This is even better than a pie falling from the sky. If you can really become a refiner, then your future path will be much smoother. Even if you reach a higher level, you'll still have the right to speak. That's the benefit of being a refiner. Old Lin said. Of course you have to be a high-level refiner. Since you've said that, then I'll practice. Lin Yi had originally planned to practice as well. This call was just out of habit and he wanted to ask if old Lin had any problems. You're quite lucky, kid. When you have time, bring me that refiner's notes. Old Lin's heart was starting to itch. That's not a problem at all. Lin Yi and old Lin naturally wouldn't hide anything. Alright, I won't say too much. Just be careful. It's best not to let anyone else know that you have the refiner's notes. Before you become a refiner, don't casually announce that you know how to make pills. Old Lin said. Anyway, just be careful. I understand. Lin Yi wasn't someone who liked to show off. What old Lin said was exactly what Lin Yi was thinking. In the next few days, you might see many cultivators like you going to your place. Of course, I'm not too sure, but it's just a possibility. In any case, let's leave it to fate. Be careful. Old Lin hung up after saying that. Oh, wait. What do you mean? What do you mean there will be other cultivators? What do you mean I'm not too sure? Lin Yi wanted to ask, but the call was no longer going through. This made Lin Yi unable to get to the bottom of it. This made Lin Yi depressed. Why did this old man always like to say things halfway? In the next few days, there might be other cultivators coming to his place? Lin Yi was confused. How was that possible? What were other cultivators doing here? This wasn't a good place and it was extremely far away. Could they be here for the fire spirit's fruit? Chapter 1463. In the next couple of days, Lin Yi studied the notes that Zhang Liju had left behind. Lin Yi didn't put it into practice immediately, instead focusing on the refinement fire training incantation. It was short, but hard to understand. Before he understood the meaning behind it, Lin Yi didn't want to train recklessly. Some impatient people would often start to cultivate after obtaining a secret manual. In the end, they would only realize that they were cultivating in the wrong direction or cultivating in the wrong way when they were halfway through the cultivation. Or they had taken a detour and so on. It wasn't that there weren't people like this, but there were too many of them. They'd have to train from scratch or they'd go crazy. Anyways, Lin Yi didn't want to be someone like that. This was like a joke that Lin Yi had seen before where Yu Buchuan got the Bisha sword manual and was extremely happy. He opened the first page and it said, "To train in this art, one must castrate oneself first." He thought about it for a long time and in order to become number one in the world he decided to do it. But he fainted from the pain, and when he woke up he flipped to the second page. Pissing him off, the second page said, "Even if you castrate yourself you may not succeed." He endured the pain and heartache and suddenly flipped to the third page. As soon as he saw it he was so angry that he vomited blood and died. The third page said, "You don't have to castrate yourself to succeed." Of course, this was just a joke. It was an exaggeration. Lin Yi didn't know if there were people this stupid and sad in real life, but there were definitely people who were too impatient. This was what it meant to be impatient, not eating hot tofu. Naipeo was training hard in the wasp bush. The hot sun made him sweat all over, but he didn't feel tired at all. Suddenly he sneezed. Naipeo rubbed his nose and looked up at the sun, confused. How could he sneeze on a hot day like this? Was someone talking about him behind his back? Naipeo didn't understand what was going on, and so he shook his head and continued training. He swore in his heart, "I want to become a super master. I want to kill Lin Yi." The first thing Lin Yi studied was the Fire Element Refiner's Practitioner's Art. This was also the one most refiners would choose, since it was versatile and could be used to concoct a lot of normal elixirs. Of course, unless the practitioner's body was restricted by the practitioner's chi, there were some who would clash with the Fire Element Refiner's fire, such as those who practiced the Ice Element's practitioner's arts. These people would basically never succeed in practicing the Fire Element Refiner's fire, but if they practiced the Water Element their chances of success would be higher. In order to cultivate alchemic fire besides true energy, one also needed a strong mental perception. The so-called spiritual perception was a rather mysterious existence. To put it bluntly, it was able to use spiritual perception to sense the state of the elixir in the furnace and change the size and temperature of the alchemy fire. After all, every elixir had a different congealing process. If the alchemy fire was too strong or the congealing time was too long, it could affect the final quality of the elixir and even turn it into a furnace of useless elixirs. Of course, there was no need to use spiritual perception to refine the same type of elixir. Even if one did not have spiritual perception, they would still be able to find a pattern from the failures and increase their success rate. However, this didn't matter to low-grade pills with ordinary materials. After all, there were plenty of raw materials and they could be casually wasted. But for high-grade pills, it wasn't easy to gather enough materials to refine a pill. How could they waste the opportunity to experiment? So, it was destined that alchemists without strong mental perception could only stay at the beginner level. Even if their alchemic fire was trained to the 7th level of the yellow level, they still wouldn't be able to successfully refine a 7th level pill. As a result, the profession of an alchemist became extremely prominent, even more respected than a cultivator. The Sun family, a family with a healing mental cultivation method, had become a transcendent existence, not to mention an alchemist who could refine pills with the same effect. However, because alchemic fire was difficult to cultivate, the amount of true energy consumed was huge, and with the limitation of mental perception, the number of alchemists was limited, and they were destined to be a rare existence. And alchemists had also become the target of many forces, because if a family or sect had an alchemist, they might be able to soar. Of course, Lin Yi's goal in learning alchemy was very simple. There was nothing else to do at the moment, so he might as well find something to do. Otherwise, when the snow stopped, it would be very boring. After completely memorizing the mantra of alchemic fire catalyzing, Lin Yi was ready to start trying to catalyze alchemic fire. Alchemic fire wasn't formed out of thin air, but using the mantra of alchemic fire training, it converted the true energy in the cultivator's body into alchemic fire. Therefore, if one wasn't a high-level cultivator, they wouldn't be able to withstand such a huge consumption of true energy. This was also the reason why golden class cultivators couldn't become a 7th-level golden class alchemist, because if their true energy couldn't keep up, they might give up halfway on the path of alchemy, resulting in the destruction of the pill or the explosion of the furnace. However, even if you were a heaven stage expert and had boundless true chi in your body, you could use it at will, but not every cultivator could freely use the Dan fire catalyzing mental cultivation method. Some cultivators, even if they could catalyze the Dan fire, the speed of catalyzing was still the most important. If the chi catalyzed quickly, the alchemic fire would naturally be strong, but if the chi catalyzed slowly, the alchemic fire would naturally be small. During alchemy, the control of the fire couldn't be neglected. Alchemy required different types of pills to adjust the intensity of the fire. You might suddenly need to increase the intensity of the fire to condense the pill, but if you had true energy and couldn't catalyze the alchemic fire, you could only worry about it and the entire furnace of pills would be ruined. Therefore, because of this restriction, many people could not continue on the path of alchemy. The number of people who truly became alchemists could be described as pitifully small. Of course, this pitifully small number was compared to the base number of cultivators. But because of this, the identity and status of these alchemists couldn't be ignored. This was also why Zhang Liju had friends all over the world. Which force didn't want to be friends with a supreme class alchemist like him? Chapter 1464. But one shouldn't underestimate this beginning. Without a master, very few people would be able to figure it out. But Lin Yi didn't have a choice. Most of the things he practiced were self-taught. Even his master and old geezer practiced things that were very different from his, and they couldn't help him at all. The only one who could be considered a teacher was Jiao Yazi. But when it came to elixir making, Jiao Yazi obviously couldn't help himself. Lin Yi had to figure it out by himself. Thinking about it, he had inherited Zhang Liju's legacy, so he could be considered a disciple of Zhang Liju. After calming himself down, Lin Yi slowly started the incantation to catalyze the fire element refinement fire. This was the process of catalyzing his qi into a fire element refinement fire. Only when he was familiar with the process and could catalyze it freely would he be able to concoct elixirs. The incantation didn't seem to be much, but it was a very difficult process to catalyze the refinement fire. Lin Yi could even feel his qi depleting quickly, but there were no signs of the refinement fire forming at all. It could be said that his qi was wasted for nothing. After practicing for a day, Lin Yi finally understood why there were so few refiners, and why so many of them gave up halfway. This was just the beginning of the refinement fire catalyzing, and the qi used up could only be described as horrifying. If he really became a refiner, how much qi would he need? No wonder there weren't any low-level practitioners among the refiners. These low-level practitioners really couldn't take it. Lin Yi hadn't achieved anything yet, and he had already used up a third of his qi. Although Lin Yi practiced from morning to night without stopping, this level of exhaustion wasn't something normal people could take. Other than Lin Yi, who else didn't accumulate their qi through hard work and training? Wasting a third of it in one go, who could take it? If this continued, the qi in his body would be used up in a few days, and not only would he not be able to train the refinement fire, but he would also lose his practice. It wasn't worth it at all. However, Lin Yi could make up for it by cultivating at night, so there was no problem. And so, Lin Yi used his Dan fire during the day and practiced the art of dragon mastery at night. With his qi decreasing and increasing, Lin Yi's strength improved a little. He felt like he was about to break through to the late phase of mystic mid-phase peak. Phew. Lin Yi was a little disappointed. After 2 days of catalyzing cultivation, he had not made any progress. He had already consumed more than 2/3 of the true qi in his body, but there was no result at all. Fortunately, Lin Yi could quickly replenish the true qi he had lost. If it were anyone else, they would not have been able to catalyze as much as Lin Yi. On the 3rd day, Lin Yi suddenly felt a burning sensation in the center of his palm. This kind of feeling made Lin Yi jump in fright. Luckily, Lin Yi's mental fortitude was relatively strong, so he ignored it and continued to catalyze the Dan fire. Finally, with a poof sound, a deep red flame sprang out from the center of Lin Yi's palm. Ah! Lin Yi couldn't help but yelp. It wasn't that Lin Yi was scalded, but this strange situation really made Lin Yi jump in fright. Luckily, Lin Yi was prepared for this, so he didn't stop catalyzing the fire. Otherwise, all his previous efforts would have been wasted. However, although the flame felt hot, it didn't burn his hand. From what Lin Yi could see, it was very different from normal flames. Normal flames were light reddish-yellow, but the flame on his palm was deep red. It looked like the color of chemical combustion. But this wasn't chemistry. It was a Dan fire converted from the true qi in the body. If chemistry could replace it, then it would save a lot of trouble and the profession of alchemist wouldn't be so precious. The small flame in Lin Yi's hands was quite fun. Lin Yi tried to speed up the speed of the true qi catalyzing to make the flame more vigorous, but the result was ruthless. Lin Yi failed. Lin Yi still couldn't control the speed of the flame catalyzing. The flame in his hand actually extinguished under Lin Yi's anxiousness. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. It seemed that he was also impatient. He had just catalyzed a real flame here and now he was thinking about controlling the size of the flame. It was indeed a little too aggressive. GG, Skybolt Pig called out twice as if it was laughing at Lin Yi's failure. Damn pig, what are you laughing at? Don't want to level up anymore? Lin Yi was in a bad mood, so he glared at Skybolt Pig and threatened. Chapter 1465. Next, Lin Yi continued to experiment several times, but the results were the same. Once the fire temperature was changed, the alchemy fire would automatically extinguish. It was very accurate. Even Lin Yi could accurately know the time interval between the alchemy fire extinguishing. It seems I can only stop first. Lin Yi shook his head and said, I don't know if it's because of my own reason, or because of the lack of energy. However, Lin Yi did not give up. If the fire alchemy fire did not work, wasn't there other alchemy fires of gold, earth, water and wood? Lin Yi experimented one by one. He did not believe that he could not find a suitable alchemy fire for him to use. Therefore, in the next few days, Lin Yi began to experiment with the water alchemy fire catalysis. With the previous experience of the fire alchemy fire, the water alchemy fire catalysis process was much easier than before. Lin Yi only used 1 day to catalyze the water alchemy fire. Anyway, Lin Yi had the jade pendant space to support him. He was not afraid that his energy would not be able to keep up, so alchemy masters like Lin Yi were really rare. Generally, many people would choose to give up after practicing a kind of alchemy fire. After all, no one could afford the energy consumption brought about by the experiment. Even a heaven stage master would need to recover for a while before trying the next alchemy fire, unlike Lin Yi who could directly change the fire without any pressure. Although Lin Yi's advantage was very obvious, the results still made Lin Yi very disappointed. The water alchemy fire was successfully catalyzed, but when Lin Yi wanted to change the fire temperature, he failed again. Lin Yi sighed, but fortunately, Lin Yi did not waste much time, so he was not too disappointed. There were still gold, wood and earth alchemy fires to experiment. There was still a chance. Lin Yi left-hand fire alchemy fire, right water alchemy fire, back and forth for a while, and then began to practice the gold alchemy fire. However, just as Lin Yi had successfully catalyzed the gold attribute alchemic fire, suddenly there were sounds of voices coming from outside the inn. Lin Yi was shocked and immediately stopped cultivating. He quickly moved to the windowsill and looked out. What Lin Yi didn't expect was that there was an extra BMW X6 SUV in the parking lot at the entrance of the inn. Previously, there was only Lin Yi's Grand Cherokee and the Boss Land Rover in the parking lot. This BMW X6 obviously just arrived here. This small town was originally located in an extremely remote area, and almost no tourists would come here. Previously, apart from Lin Yi's room, there were no other guests in the entire inn. At that time when Lin Yi first came here, he was also very curious about this place. Lin Yi was very puzzled about the size of the inn in this small town. The interior decoration was also very exquisite, but the name of the inn was a bit retro. It was called Iceberg Inn. On the inn signboard, there was a logo of an ice flower pattern, which seemed to be a company's chain logo. Lin Yi was very curious. How could there be such a big inn in this small town that seemed to have no outsiders at all? Wasn't the owner of this inn afraid of losing money? Of course, Lin Yi was new here and it was not good to ask directly when it involved these business secrets. And today someone came here again, which made Lin Yi a little confused. Of course, what surprised Lin Yi the most was that the BMW's license plate was actually the license plate of Donghai City, which was near Songshan City. In other words, this person should be from the same place as him. After the BMW X6 stopped, two young men got out of the car. Although the young man driving and the young man in the car were dressed similarly, from his tone and demeanor, it was obvious that he was respectful. It seemed that the young man in the car was the leader. The two of them had a master-servant relationship. Master Tan, this is the inn that the invitation told everyone to check into. It's called Iceberg Inn. The young driver pointed at the Iceberg Inn signboard and said to the young man in the car. Not bad, it looks like we're early, there aren't many people here yet. Master Tan looked at Lin Yi's Jeep and the owner's Land Rover next to the car and said, we can familiarize ourselves with the environment. Coming early is also an advantage. We can use this opportunity to rope in people from other houses and sects and see if there's a possibility of cooperation. Master Tan clearly didn't care much about Lin Yi and the owner's car. After the young driver locked the car, the two of them walked directly into the lobby of the Iceberg Inn to check in. Hello, we are from the hidden house of Zhao of Donghai. This is the invitation we received. May I ask when the Ice Palace trial will begin? The young driver arrived at the front desk of the inn and took out a letter. It was the letter with the ice flower symbol in Zhao Guangyin's hand. The inn was big, but there weren't any waiters in the lobby. Only the owner sat behind the bar, and after hearing the young driver's words he said expressionlessly, everyone who comes here knows about the trial. Otherwise who would come here? Just take out your ID and register, then go back to your room and wait. Yes. Master Tan nodded awkwardly. He didn't expect the owner to not give him any face at all, but he didn't dare show any displeasure. This was the place designated by the Ice Palace, so the owner should be part of the Ice Palace as well. Even a normal person from the Ice Palace wasn't someone House Zhao could afford to offend. Hidden houses and ancient sects weren't on the same level at all. It was like the relationship between a normal house and a hidden house. Zhao Qiku and Zhao Qijiu, do you want one room or two? The owner asked after registering their identities. These two naturally were the hidden house Zhao's Zhao Qikun and Zhao Qijiu. Zhao Qijiu's surname was Zhao too, but it was something the Zhaos gave him after he came to House Zhao. The Qi in the middle meant that he was in the same generation as Zhao Qibing and Zhao Qikun, and the number 9 was a number. The other disciples of House Zhao were called Zhao Qishir, Zhao Qishi, and so on. Some families would purposely use the same word in their names based on seniority, but some families didn't care about that and wouldn't use it. Chapter 1466. One room is fine, we're together. Qikun nodded to the owner politely. All right, one room, 10,000 deposit, 500 per day. The owner said faintly. Qijiu quickly swiped his card and paid the bill, taking the room card with Qikun as they quickly went upstairs. The room price wasn't high, but the deposit for the test was shockingly expensive. Evidently, the rent and deposit were just a cover for normal tourists who didn't know about it. At that moment, Lin Yi had left the room and was standing at the door, listening to the conversation between Qikun and the owner. Because he was curious about who Qikun and the others were, Lin Yi wanted to see what they were talking about, so he came to the door. There was no one in the hotel right now, so while Qikun and the others weren't speaking loudly, Lin Yi heard every single word. Ice Palace test? What was that? Lin Yi didn't know what was going on. Why did it sound like some sect was holding some kind of event? Plus, Qikun and Qijiu didn't even have invitations. But the owner didn't even bother looking at it. Did he think that everyone who came here had invitations? No wonder the owner didn't find it strange at all when he came here, ignoring his actions. So he thought that Lin Yi was someone who had received an invitation to participate in the Ice Palace test? Lin Yi understood. Why was this hotel so big? So this was why it had such a retro name. Sects and whatnot like to have retro names. But what was the purpose of this Ice Palace test? He'd come to this hotel by chance and staying here. Was this a blessing or a curse? Qikun Qijiu Hidden House Zhao? Their names were similar to Zhao Qibing's. Could they be from the hidden house that Zhao Qibing was from? With that thought, Lin Yi put these two on the list of people he should be wary of. The hatred between him and the hidden house Zhao was irresolved. Qibing, Uncle Zhu Yaowang, and the others were all injured because of him, and Lin Yi didn't plan on making peace with Qibing. After all, the conflict between Lin Yi and Qibing was different from Qintian's. Between Lin Yi and Qintian, at the end of the day they were more playful and playful. Most of the time they were just messing with Qintian, not fighting each other. But it was different with Zhao Qibing. Zhao Qibing had been causing trouble for him time and time again, And unless House Zhao gave up on Zhao Qibing to apologize to Lin Yi, there was no chance of reconciliation. Of course, these two were on the list of people Lin Yi should be wary of, but that didn't stop Lin Yi from interacting with them and getting some useful information from them. Lin Yi had to figure out what was going on with this Ice Palace test. But his name in the hidden House Zhao shouldn't be a secret anymore. With that thought, Lin Yi was glad that he was lucky. This time his identity was made by Tianlong and he was called Ling Yi, not Lin Yi. Ling Yi was a name he used when he was in the department, and Tianlong had a complete file on it, so he didn't need to make a new one. He used the identity of the department because he didn't want Lin Yi to get into trouble. After all, there was an ice coffin in the back of the car. Ling Yi, although the pronunciation was similar, they were two completely different people. He believed that these two from the hidden House Zhao wouldn't suspect him, and even if they did, he'd get what he wanted to know. But it had to be said that Zhang Wen had hit the jackpot by a fluke, naming the substitute 01. Of course, Lin Yi wasn't in a rush to contact Qikuan and the others. He stayed in his room and waited. When Qikuan stopped the car, Lin Yi already knew what he was planning. He came here so early to contact the others, so Lin Yi waited for them to contact him. This way it wouldn't be too sudden. The reason why Qikuan and Qiju were here so early was because old Zhao was in solitary practice. The other disciples of the noble houses would talk to the head of the house before they left, and they'd be told about the things to pay attention to during the test. But old Zhao was in solitary practice, and Qikuan and Qiju had no choice but to leave first. They wanted to look around and see if they could get some allies here. Grandpa's practice really isn't the right time, and the Ice Palace test just had to start now. Qikuan went into his room and tidied up before speaking to Qiju, a little depressed. I always wanted the test to start, and every time I asked Grandpa, he'd say that he'd tell me when it's really happening. Knowing too early isn't good for my mental state. But now he's in solitary practice. Qiju was Qikuan's confidant, and so he didn't care about what he said. He said whatever he wanted. Qiju was in the hidden House Zhao and he was a loyal supporter of Qikuan. He wanted Qikuan to become the head of the house the most. Young Master Tan, the old man, had his own concerns before, but it was a coincidence that we were able to come here this time. If the Ice Palace's trial had been held a few years later, it might not have been you and me who came here. Qiju sighed. Right now, our hidden House Zhao's situation is a little unclear. You're talking about Zhao Qibing? Qikuan frowned. Yeah, I heard that Qibing wasn't liked by the old man, but this time for some reason he suddenly came back to House Zhao and became Elder Bai's disciple. What's going on that we don't know? Qiju nodded. That's what I've been wondering about, but Grandpa's in solitary practice, and the only person who knows is Elder Bai, and no one can order him around. Other than Grandpa, no one can make him say anything. Qikuan said worriedly, do you think Zhao Qibing's appearance has something to do with Grandpa's solitary practice? Chapter 1467. Alright, 1 room, 10,000 deposit, 500 per day. The owner said faintly. Qiju quickly swiped his card and paid the bill, taking the room card with Qikuan as they quickly went upstairs. The room prices here weren't high, but the deposit for the test was shockingly expensive. Evidently, the rent and deposit were just a cover-up for normal tourists who didn't know what was going on. At that moment, Lin Yi had already left the room, standing at the door, quietly listening to the conversation between Qikuan and the owner. Because he was curious about Qikuan's identity, Lin Yi wanted to see what was going on, so he came to the door. There was no one in the hotel right now, so while Qikuan and the others weren't speaking loudly, Lin Yi heard every single word. Ice Palace test? What was that? Lin Yi didn't know what was going on. Why did it sound like some sect was holding some kind of event? Plus, Qikuan and Qiju didn't even have invitations. But the owner didn't even bother looking at it. Did he think that everyone who came here had invitations? No wonder the owner didn't find it strange at all when he came here, ignoring his actions. So he thought that Lin Yi was someone who had received an invitation to participate in the Ice Palace test? Lin Yi understood. Why was this hotel so big? So this was why it had such a retro name. Sects and whatnot like to have retro names. But what was the purpose of this Ice Palace test? He'd come to this hotel by chance and staying here. Was this a blessing or a curse? Qikuan Qiju Hidden House Zhao? Their names were similar to Zhao Qibing's. Could they be from the hidden house that Zhao Qibing was from? With that thought, Lin Yi put these two on the list of people he had to watch out for. The hatred between him and the hidden house Zhao Qibing, Uncle Zhu Yaowang, and the others were all injured because of him, and Lin Yi didn't plan on making peace with Qibing. After all, the conflict between Lin Yi and Qibing was different from Qintian's. Between Lin Yi and Qintian, at the end of the day, they were more playful and playful. Most of the time they were just messing with Qintian, not fighting each other. But it was different with Zhao Qibing. Zhao Qibing had been causing trouble for him time and time again, and unless House Zhao gave up on Zhao Qibing to apologize to Lin Yi, there was no chance of reconciliation. Of course, although these two were on Lin Yi's list of people to watch out for, it didn't stop Lin Yi from interacting with them and getting some useful information from them. Lin Yi had to figure out what this ice palace test was all about. But his name in the hidden house Zhao wasn't a secret anymore. With that thought, Lin Yi felt lucky. This time his identity was made by Feng Tianlong. His name was Ling Yi, not Lin Yi. Ling Yi was a name he'd used when he was on a mission with the Supernatural Investigation Department. Tianlong had a complete file on it, so he didn't need to make a new one. He used the identity of the investigation department because he didn't want Lin Yi to get into trouble. After all, there was an ice coffin in the back of the car. Ling Yi. The pronunciation was similar, but they were two completely different people. He believed that these two wouldn't suspect him. Even if they did, he'd get what he wanted to know. But he had to admit that Zhang Wen had gotten it right, naming Lin Yi's substitute 01. Of course, Lin Yi wasn't in a rush to contact Qikuan and the others. He stayed in his room and waited. When Qikuan stopped the car, Lin Yi already knew what he was planning. He came here early to contact the others, and so Lin Yi waited for them to contact him. That way it wouldn't be too out of place. The reason why Qikuan and Qijio came here so early was because old Zhao was in solitary practice. The other disciples of the noble houses would talk to the head of the house before they left, being told some things to take note of, but the old man of House Zhao was in solitary practicing, and Qikuan and Qijio had no choice but to leave first. They wanted to find some information here, see if they could get some allies here. Grandpa's practice really isn't the right time, and the ice palace test just had to start now. Qikuan went into his room and tidied up before speaking to Qijio, a little depressed. I always looked forward to the ice palace test, and every time I asked Grandpa, he'd say that he'd tell me about it when it's really happening. It's not good for my training if I know too early. But now he's in solitary practice. Because Qijio was Qikuan's confidant, he didn't care about what he said. Qijio was in the hidden house and he was a loyal supporter of Qikuan. He wanted Qikuan to become the head of the house the most. Young Master Tan, the old man, had his own concerns before, but it was a coincidence that we were able to come here this time. If the Ice Palace's trial had been held a few years later, it might not have been you and me who came here. Qijio sighed. Right now, the situation of our hidden house is a little unclear. You're talking about Zhao Qibing? Qikuan frowned. Yeah, I heard that Qibing wasn't liked by the old man, but this time for some reason he suddenly came back to House Zhao and became Elder Bai's disciple. What's going on that we don't know? Qijio nodded. That's what I've been wondering about, but Grandpa's in solitary practice, and the only person who knows is Elder Bai. He's someone who can't be ordered around, and other than Grandpa no one can make him say anything. Qikuan said worriedly, do you think that Zhao Qibing's appearance has something to do with Grandpa's solitary practice? Chapter 1468. Master Kun, Zhao Qibing must have been praised by the old man in some way, that's for sure. Otherwise he wouldn't have become Elder Bai's disciple, and Elder Bai seems to want to train this disciple with all his heart. Qijio said, that's why I said that if we'd waited a few years, it wouldn't have been us here. You're saying that Elder Bai might have used those treasures and that secret technique? Qikuan blinked. Isn't that something only the next head of the house can use? What if Elder Bai and Elder Bai have already decided on Zhao Qibing as the next head of the house? Qijio asked. That. Qikuan hesitated, a fierce look in his eyes. I don't care if Elder Bai can use that secret technique to level up Zhao Qibing, but I have to win this Ice Palace test. I have to enter the Ice Palace and become an outer disciple, maybe even an inner disciple. I have to become the head of House Zhao. Qijio jumped. Master Kun, you can't just say stuff like that. The walls have ears. So what if we say it here? The old man can't hear us and no one knows us. Qikuan smiled. Do you know why the old man doesn't like my uncle? It's because he's too careful, isn't it? The old man doesn't like people like that. In order to become the head of the house, one has to have the magnanimity and spirit of a head. He can't do that. That's true, but there's no harm in being careful. Chijio said. Right, there were 2 cars parked downstairs, one with a local license plate and the other with a foreign one. The local one probably belongs to the owner of the inn, but we don't have to worry about it. The owner of the other car must be here for the Ice Palace test as well. I wonder which house or power he's representing. Let's find a chance to get in touch tonight and see if we can become friends. Even if we can't work together, it'd be best if we don't become enemies. Chikun said. In the test, one more friend means one more path. Young Master Tan is right, but how should we approach him? If it's too deliberate, it'll seem a bit pretentious. Noble houses aren't idiots. Chijio said. See. It'd be best if we meet by chance, but if it doesn't work, we'll just go up to him and introduce ourselves. There's no need to pretend or anything, we all have the same goal anyways. Chikun said. Chikun wanted to get in touch with Lin Yi, and on Lin Yi's side naturally wanted to get in touch with Chikun as well. He wanted to get more information about the Ice Palace test from them. Lin Yi didn't want to get involved in the Ice Palace testing. Lin Yi's goal here was just to find the fruit. But since this was Ice Palace's area of influence, would the fruit have anything to do with the Ice Palace? According to what Li Ju said, the fire spirit's fruit was a treasure, and with a powerful existence like Ice Palace nearby, would they let go of a treasure like this? The strength of the Ice Palace could be seen from the identity of the participants. Even the hidden house Zhao was here, so naturally there would be other hidden houses here as well. Then the identity of the Ice Palace was obvious. They were probably an ancient sect, and only an ancient sect could be above the hidden house Zhao. And so, Lin Yi decided to get in touch with Chikun and Chijio. But how would he get in touch with them? Chikun and Chijio really wanted to get in touch with him, but it wouldn't be good to do it too deliberately. The inn didn't provide food, and these few days, Lin Yi would go to the food stalls to get something to eat. Sometimes he'd forget to eat when he was training his refinement fire. Lin Yi was a mystic anyway, a few days without food was no problem. Of course, not eating for a long time wouldn't work either. Mystics weren't gods, and they were different from sky classes. 3 to 5 days without food was fine, but 10 days to half a month would be enough for them to starve to death. After all, the qi outside wasn't enough to keep up with the qi used up in the body. And so, Lin Yi was a special case. There was an endless amount of energy in the jade space to replenish the energy he lost, and Lin Yi just needed to convert the energy in the jade space to his own, saving him the trouble of using pure qi to replenish his energy. He looked at the time, it was dinner time, and he walked out of the room. When he opened the door, he purposely made some noise. He believed that with Chikun and Chijio's mystic strength, they would be able to sense it easily. After all, they didn't live far from him. As expected, as Lin Yi walked out of his room and closed the door, a guest room not far away opened its door as well. Chikun and Chijio walked out as well, but when they saw that Lin Yi was alone, they froze. One had to know that every house or power could send 2 people to participate in the Ice Palace test, and most houses would send 2 people. After all, being in the same house meant that they could look out for each other, and it was better than just one person. Of course, there were special cases as well. For example, the mystics of the house didn't like each other, and they fought fiercely with each other. Under these circumstances, it was normal for the house to only send one person to participate in the test for safety reasons. After all, if the 2 people they sent were cold-blooded, then they might use the test to kill each other. If something happened, it wouldn't be worth it. Not only would they fail to achieve the goal of the test, but they'd also lose 2 mystics for nothing. What a coincidence. Are you going for dinner? Chikun quickened his steps and smiled at Lin Yi. Yes, what business do you 2 have? You 2 are new here, right? Haven't seen you before? Lin Yi wanted to talk as well, so he used Chikun's topic to ask. Chapter 1469. School Beauty's Bodyguard 146. Chapter 1467. Invite to join. Chikun didn't get annoyed at Lin Yi's words. He'd heard that some people from small sects would be very secretive about their masters, unlike him who was a disciple of a noble house. The disciples of these sects who came out for training, unless they were the sons of the elders or the sons of the sect masters or direct disciples who were a bit more arrogant, the other normal disciples would be very careful. As far as he was concerned, Lin Yi was this kind of person. Thank you for understanding, Brother Zhao. Lin Yi gave a you-know smile as he raised his flask and took a big gulp. Good. Great. Chikuan and Chijio took a sip as well before putting down their flasks. The lamb leg and lamb chops would take a long time to cook, but none of them were in a rush. They weren't here to eat. Chikuan was here to make connections, and Lin Yi was here to get some information. You two are early coming to the test this early? Lin Yi purposely changed the topic to the Ice Palace trial. He wanted to learn more about training through Chikuan and Chijio. Haha, isn't Brother Ling earlier? Chikuan smiled. I'm afraid you're the first one here. Yeah. Lin Yi shrugged helplessly. Can't help it, Master just had to go into solitary practice at this time, and there was no point in me staying in the sect, so I came here first. Lin Yi told him who he was. This way, even if he didn't know anything, he could say that his master was in solitary practice and he didn't know the details. Chikuan wouldn't suspect anything. What a coincidence. My grandpa is in solitary practice as well, so there's no point in us staying at home, so we came here first, Chikuan said, surprised as he looked at Lin Yi. Brother Ling, we really are fated. You guys too? What a coincidence. Lin Yi smiled to himself. He didn't think that he'd gotten it right. Now Chikuan wouldn't suspect anything. Yeah, there's a good saying. Chikuan smiled. I wonder how strong Brother Ling is, can you tell me? This trial is limited to Mystic Class Masters. Brother Ling, what level of Mystic Class are you at? Chikuan was afraid that Lin Yi would keep it for himself, so he explained the rules clearly. Even if we're all Mystic Class Masters, you don't have to worry about anything. He said this because he was afraid that Lin Yi didn't know anything and was even more ignorant than him. I'm not talented, I'm only at the peak of the middle phase of the Mystic Class. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. There's a gap between the young and the old in my sect. Those who are around the same level as me are all Earth Class Masters, and those who joined after me are only Golden Class. Thinking about it, I'm the only one who fits the requirements. Lin Yi blurted out that only strength was real, the rest was made up. What Lin Yi said was more in line with the reality of the situation. I see, no wonder Brother Ling came alone, that's the reason. Chikuan said that, but he was shocked. It seemed that Lin Yi's sect wasn't small at all, even the young generation were Earth Class Masters. The sect was definitely not normal. With that thought, he started to think about making friends with Lin Yi. Lin Yi, on the other hand, wanted Chikuan to misunderstand. How could he talk to him if he didn't? Yeah, how strong are the two Zhao brothers? Lin Yi knew their strength, but he still asked again without batting an eyelid. I'm Mystic Middle Phase Peak. Same as Brother Ling. Little Jiao is Mystic Late Phase, a little higher than us. Chikuan said proudly this was his trump card. In the tournament, Mystic Class was the limit and Chijio was Mystic Late Phase. This made their advantage obvious, and they had an easier time winning compared to the other Mystic Early Phase participants. Then you two should be quite confident in the test, right? Lin Yi continued to flatter the two without batting an eyelid. It's hard to say, there might even be Mystic Late Phase Peak. Chikuan smiled faintly. Plus, no one knows how the tournament is. We'll have to wait for the Ice Palace people to come. That's true, but even if you two aren't the best, you're definitely at the top, so there's no need to worry. Lin Yi continued to flatter them. Right, have you been to the Ice Palace before? Who could have been there before? It seems like Brother Ling really doesn't know anything. That's right, the elders and the master wouldn't tell us about it before it starts. Chikuan himself was like that, but he was confident that he knew more than Lin Yi. Who could have been to the Ice Palace before? It's all our first time here. Then where is the Ice Palace? Is it nearby? Lin Yi asked. Yeah, it's over there. Chikuan pointed in a direction. I know the general direction, but I've never been there before. If you want to go to the Ice Palace, you have to pass the test. Normal people wouldn't be able to just go there. The Ice Palace is different from us hidden houses and normal sects. It's an ancient sect. It really was an ancient sect. Lin Yi nodded in his heart, but he was a little hesitant about the direction Chikuan was pointing at. Wasn't that where the fire spirit's fruit was? Isn't that the land of the extreme north? Why was there an ice palace there? According to Zhang Liju's description, there shouldn't be any people here. Otherwise Zhang Liju would have told him about it. That was right. How many years had it been? Time had changed. It wasn't strange for a sect to appear here. But this made it a lot more troublesome for Lin Yi to find the fruit. If that was where the Ice Palace was, then the fire spirit's fruit would have been found by them already, and he wouldn't be able to pick it without their permission. Lin Yi couldn't help but frown at the thought. He thought that his biggest problem would be finding the exact location of the fruit in this vast expanse. But it seemed that the ice palace had become his biggest obstacle. I don't know if I can win this time, Lin Yi said worriedly. This was his true feelings and he didn't need to pretend. And so, from Chikuan's perspective, Lin Yi was really worried. He tried to comfort him. Who doesn't want to win here? But the Ice Palace has a limited number of outer disciples and it's not that easy to get the treasures, so I wonder if Brother Ling is interested in forming a team? School Beauty's Personal Expert 146. He's currently in contact with them and can get their help. Only hidden houses and sects can protect them. Back then when House Yu went out to train, didn't the Secret Investigation Bureau send people to protect them too? That's true. Chikuan nodded. I'm not doubting his qualifications. To be able to participate in the test means that he's strong enough. Otherwise he wouldn't be here looking for death. I just don't know where he comes from and if he's related to us, the hidden house Xiao? I've never heard of us having a close relationship with other houses or sections. Only the hidden house you can be considered in-laws with us. But Master Tan, your identity is a little awkward. Chijio smiled bitterly. If Guangyin and Xiaojin's child had come to the test personally, then there was a possibility of forming an alliance with House Yu, but now? It was already good enough that House Yu didn't harm them. Who asked them to be the next heir of House Xiao? House Yu definitely wanted Xiaojin's son to be the heir of House Xiao, and that way they could maintain a good relationship with House Yu. That's not a problem. House Yu isn't a solid block anymore as far as I know. The ones participating this time are Yu Bing and Yu Shan. We don't need to think about Yu Bing, but we can make use of Yu Shan. Yu Shan also wants to be the heir of House Yu, and we'll be able to make use of him. Chikun saw through everything. These two from House Yu aren't of the same mind. Looks like we'll have a good show to watch. Master Tan, you're wise. Chiju said. No matter what, we have an ally with House Yu, so we'll have a better chance of passing this test. After returning to the inn, Lin Yi said goodbye to Chikuan and Chijio and went back to his room. Today Lin Yi didn't get a lot of information, but it was useful. Lin Yi naturally didn't expect to get everything in one day. That wasn't realistic, and asking too much would make Chikuan suspicious. Seemed that Chikuan was a smart man. Lin Yi got two useful information. One was that the location of the Ice Palace was very similar to the location of the fruit, and the other was the reward for winning the test. One was to become an outer disciple of the Ice Palace, and the other was to get the right to exchange treasures. Becoming an outer disciple of the Ice Palace didn't interest Lin Yi much, but the right to exchange treasures did interest Lin Yi. He didn't know if the Fire Spirit's fruit was really controlled by the Ice Palace, and if so, would he be able to exchange it for the fruit? Of course, this was just the initial information Lin Yi had gotten. He would have to wait until he got more information before making a decision. In the next 2 days, Lin Yi practiced his refinement fire during the day, and went out to eat with Chikuan and Chijio at night. They ate a lot of good food and drank a lot of alcohol, but they didn't talk much. It seemed like the two of them didn't know as much as Chikuan and Chijio. Lin Yi even looked at their invitations. They didn't know as much as they did. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't say anything about joining Chikuan's group, and Chikuan didn't ask. As far as Chikuan was concerned, it wouldn't be good if they chased this thing too quickly. Lin Yi didn't make a decision yet, probably because he wanted to wait for a few days when there were more people. He wasn't in a rush to make a decision with the two of them. Chapter 1471. After the water element refinement fire, Lin Yi had created the metal element, wood element and earth element refinement fire. In other words, Lin Yi had become a 5-element refinement master. This was unprecedented in Zhang Liju's refinement notes. Normally speaking, a normal refinement master would be able to master one refinement fire in their entire lifetimes, and they were limited by the nature of the qi in their body. Being able to create another refinement fire on top of one refinement fire was already a very powerful refinement master. Being able to create 3 different types of refinement fire was a genius, but more than 3 types had never been seen before. At least Zhang Liju had never seen it before. Even the best practitioners' arts couldn't create so many types of refinement fire. Was he a genius or an idiot? Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Although he could create 5 types of refinement fire, it didn't mean anything. Jiao Yazi had said it long ago that the qi in his body was omnipotent, and since it was omnipotent, it wasn't surprising that he could create any type of refinement fire. The problem was that Lin Yi couldn't control the temperature of the refinement fire continuously, so even if he could create refinement fire, he wouldn't be able to create any high-level elixirs. At Lin Yi's level, he could only create the most basic of elixirs, not even golden level 1 elixirs. Elixirs were made by combining the ingredients in the recipe into a pill, and there was no need to form the pill. This way, the effect of the pill would be much weaker than a real elixir. But Lin Yi wasn't too disappointed. After all, learning refinement was just a hobby of his. Whether or not he learned it wouldn't affect Lin Yi's current life at all, and Lin Yi didn't need to think too much about it. After all, Lin Yi didn't have a master to guide him, and he only had the refinement notes. The words inside were dry and they were all very choppy. It was something that Lin Yi had never come into contact with before. After a few days, it was already not bad for him to have achieved so far. Therefore, while Lin Yi planned to slowly study it in his spare time, he practiced using both hands to catalyze alchemy fires of different attributes at the same time. In the past, Lin Yi had only tried catalyzing one alchemy fire with his left hand, and when the alchemy fire on his left hand was extinguished, he would catalyze another alchemy fire on his right hand. He had never tried catalyzing 2 alchemy fires of different attributes with both hands. Of course, Lin Yi did this just for fun. Lin Yi was thinking that when he went out to barbecue, he would show it to Tang Yun, Miss, and Shu. They would be very happy. Would Xiao wake up by then? However, this trip to collect the fire spirit's fruit had become a little difficult. The sudden appearance of the ice palace was like a tiger blocking the road, causing the road ahead to be filled with uncertainty. In the morning, Lin Yi acted as usual. He left the inn and went to the parking lot to check on Xiao. Although Lin Yi's senses were locked onto Xiao every night when he trained, Lin Yi still wanted to check on her every day. In fact, the weather here didn't need an ice coffin at all. Even without one, a person's body could be frozen solid. After locking the car, Lin Yi was planning to go back to the inn when a few cars drove over from afar. They were probably going to the parking lot. Lin Yi wasn't surprised after hearing what Chikuan said. The other participants should be here in 2 days. Lin Yi didn't know these people and he didn't want to talk to them. He'd let Chikuan go talk to them first. All he needed to do was to quietly gather the information he needed. Talking too much would only make things easier for him to expose himself. But after the cars stopped on one of the cars, it was someone Lin Yi knew. Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat when he saw him. If they'd met under different circumstances, maybe Lin Yi would act like he didn't know him and walk past him, but here, Lin Yi needed someone he could trust to talk to, and this person fit the bill. Some things, Lin Yi didn't want to face them. Thinking back to his past self, Lin Yi sometimes felt a little emotional. Hidden houses, They used to be high and mighty, but now they were all his enemies, including the hidden house Yu. Elder Yu didn't know that he was Lin Yi, but with the common house Yu's business, the hidden house Yu might intervene as well. Lin Yi didn't move and the person saw Lin Yi as well. He paused, ignoring the people around him, and walked towards Lin Yi. Yu Bing, it's been a while. Lin Yi smiled and greeted the person. Why are you here? You're here for the Ice Palace test as well? Yu Bing was in disbelief. He didn't understand why Lin Yi would be here. Come find me after you check in, I'm in room 201 Ling Yi. Lin Yi reminded him of his name, believing that Yu Bing would understand. Alright, see you later, brother Ling. Yu Bing nodded and said his goodbyes to Lin Yi. From the perspective of his relationship with Yu Ning, it was normal for him to call Lin Yi brother. After all, if possible, Lin Yi was his brother-in-law. How could he call his brother-in-law big brother? Lin Yi nodded and quickly entered the inn. At this time, Yushan walked over as well. He looked at Lin Yi's back and said in a weird tone, I didn't expect you to be so capable, brother. You just arrived and you're already in an alliance? A friend I met when I was training. Yu Bing evidently didn't want to introduce him to Yu Ich. They weren't the same kind of people. How could he tell him about Lin Yi's real identity? The head's son sure is strong, being able to go out and train while the others have to stay in the house. If it weren't for this test, I don't know when I'd be able to come out. Yushan curled his lips. Behind Yushan's car was the hidden house Pai's cart. They met on the road with a few other hidden houses and sects. But Pai Jishan and Pai Jihai hadn't seen Lin Yi before. They'd only heard of Lin Yi's name. so they didn't suspect that the person in front of them was Lin Yi. Pai Jishan smiled mockingly as he looked at the House Yu's disciples who started arguing with each other as soon as they arrived at the inn. In comparison, his relationship with Pai Jihai was much better. Pai Jihai was focused on practicing and didn't have the time to care about family matters. Chapter 1472. Chapter 1472, Xiao Ning's Secret. But Zhao Qikuan's follower is a mystic late phase. That's not good. Yushan won't let go of any chance to humiliate me. How about this? Why don't you go alone? Since your goal is the fruit, you don't need to get involved with me. I don't want to drag you down with me. Yu Bing's heart started pounding after hearing Qijiu's strength. After all, the difference between him and Lin Yi was too big. Even if Lin Yi really did break through to mystic late phase, he'd just broken through, and compared to someone who'd already broken through, he was at a disadvantage. Plus, there was this mystic mid-phase peak Yushan. If he went up against Qikuan and Lin Yi went up against Qijiu with Yushan ambushing them from the sidelines, who could handle that? But don't worry too much, I have a trump card. Lin Yi said. Even if it's an earth class, I have a chance to heavily injure him, so don't say things like that again. Since we're fated to meet again, we're still a team. Really? You can heavily injure an earth class? Yu Bing's eyes went wide. Fuck. Aren't you a little too strong? No wonder Xiao Ning likes you, you're a super scion. Let's not talk about that. Lin Yi interrupted Yu Bing. Some things were in the past and it wasn't that easy to start over again. Although it wasn't that easy to forget and it was even more profound, Lin Yi really didn't have the courage to bring it up again. Lin Yi, on the other hand, had found the happiness that belonged to himself, Tang Yun and Xiao Xiao. If he could stay with them for the rest of his life, that would be a type of happiness. As for other fates, there was no need to force it. Between him and the hidden House Yu, there seemed to be enmity from the beginning, and it was impossible to mediate until now. Unless Yu Ning's father could let go of the hatred of the secular House Yu and accept Lin Yi. But someone as proud as Lin Yi, even if he went to the hidden House Yu, he might not get along well. This was what Yu Ning wanted. Lin Yi couldn't give it before and he couldn't give it now either. The environment they grew up in was too different, and Yu Shaochen wasn't a reasonable person either. This meant that there wouldn't be anything between the two. So instead of being disappointed, it was better to have nothing. You don't like Ning? Yu Bing didn't end the topic and asked back. So what if I do? So what if I don't like her? Lin Yi asked back. If you like her, I can help, Yu Bing said. Help? You're thinking too simply. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Do you think there's a chance of resolving the conflict between me and the common House Yu? At least you didn't offend the hidden House Yu, Yu Bing said sincerely. If you really want to, I can really work hard. There are some things you don't know, but I can feel it from what your father told me. I can see some problems as well, Lin Yi said emotionally. Lin Yi sighed. I don't know if you've noticed, but your House Yu values her more than you do. Although Yu Bing didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that Lin Yi's words hit the nail on the head. Yes, in House Yu Ning's position. She was more important than him, a direct descendant. The old ancestor of House Yu loved Yu Ning to a degree that even surpassed normal doting. The way his grandfather looked at Yu Ning was like he saw the future of House Yu, the glory of House Yu. But when he looked at him and Yushan, he wouldn't look at Yushan like that, only sternness. I don't know what secrets she has, but I feel that she... Lin Yi didn't finish his sentence before Yu Bing subconsciously covered his mouth. Shoo. Yu Bing jumped in fright, but then he remembered that they were in an inn, not House Yu. This was an inn, not House Yu. He couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile. I'm sorry, it's just a reflex. What's wrong? Lin Yi was confused by Yu Bing's actions. I asked my father curiously before, just like you, about Ning, but I was sternly told that I'm not allowed to ask or talk about it anymore. Yu Ning is a taboo in House Yu, no one dares to talk about it. Yu Bing shrugged. I subconsciously thought that we were at House Yu, so I was afraid that someone might hear us. As expected. Lin Yi sighed. So, it's better not to think about some things. But you're not weak right now, Yu Bing said. You've actually become a mystic mid-phase peak and you're about to break through to the late phase. I really didn't expect that. Our family has treasures to make elixirs, but you probably don't have them. I have my own way of practicing, Lin Yi said. Strength isn't the important thing is that I just offended your family. Yu Bing paused. This is a qi gathering pill, I got it from someone called Elder Yu, Linny took out a small bottle and put it in front of Yu Bing. Qi gathering pill. Yu Bing's eyes were wide open as he stood up with a whoosh, looking at the bottle in disbelief. Lin Yi's move had shocked him to the point where he couldn't believe it. It wasn't just because it was a qi gathering pill, but also because he got it from Elder Yu. Yu Bing's face changed. He naturally knew what a qi gathering pill was, and he knew that House Yu had sent Yu Huixing to the tomb to steal it, but he never would have thought that the reason why Huixing couldn't find the pill was because Lin Yi had stolen it. Yu Bing's first thought wasn't on how to get the pill back. Although his father needed it, Yu Bing knew that this was the rule of the martial world. This pill didn't belong to Yu Huixing, it belonged to the tomb master, and so it belonged to whoever got it first. It didn't belong to anyone, so there was no way to get it back. What Yu Bing thought about was that Lin Yi trusted him the most. It was such a secret and it was related to House Yu, but Lin Yi was still able to tell him. This touched Yu Bing a little. Otherwise, Lin Yi could have just not told him and he wouldn't have known. Do you think that the hatred between us can be resolved? Lin Yi looked at Yu Bing's expression. There was no anger, no greed, only shock and helplessness. Lin Yi wasn't wrong about him after all. Lin Yi actually wanted to test Yu Bing's character and thought even if Lin Yi didn't take it out now, if they really couldn't find the fruit in the test, then this qi gathering pill would become the pill Lin Yi used to exchange for the fruit with the Ice Palace. Chapter 147 School Beauty's Personal Expert. Chapter 1473. Chapter 1471, Yu Bing's Invitation. The trial of the Ice Palace is based on the number of treasures found on the snowy mountain. However, you can also fight for each other's spoils. In other words, the strong are respected. Whoever has the most treasures in their hands will be the winner. Yu Bing continued, before the test, everyone will be given an Ice Mountain Jade, and it's said that this jade can not only score the treasures you get, but it also has a recording function. In other words, it's impossible for you to keep any treasure for yourself, unless it's taken by force. Otherwise, as long as it's on you, the jade will show. Lin Yi nodded. That magical? Lin Yi was a little surprised after hearing Yu Bing's words, but to an ancient sect, having such a magical jade wasn't much. Yeah. Yu Bing nodded. So, if you really want the fruit, there are only two ways. Either you win the test and get the right to trade, or you sneak away during the test. But these two ways aren't absolute. The first way is possible even if you get the right to trade if the Ice Palace doesn't have the fruit, or if they don't want to trade with you. Even if they do, there's nothing you can do. The second way is easier, but I'm afraid that you won't be able to find it, or even if you do, you won't be able to bring it away. Even if you and I work together, we won't be a match for the Ice Palace. Yu Bing naturally treated himself as one of Lin Yi's people. Analyzing the problem from Lin Yi's point, this made Lin Yi very touched. The two met because of Yu Ning. Yu Bing wanted to test if the man who made his sister fall in love with him was capable, and so the two had to fight. But back then they were both golden class masters and now they were mystic class masters. The second way is a good way, but you don't have to worry about running away. I'll let my friend eat it during the test, and when the fruit is gone, the Ice Palace won't be able to find anything without evidence. Lin Yi smiled, but I'm afraid they won't be able to find it. Eat it. Yu Bing's eyes widened in shock. Everyone knew that treasures were good stuff, but even good stuff couldn't be eaten directly. They had to be made into medicinal soup or pills by the family's pharmacist before ingesting them. Eating them directly might not be able to achieve the desired effect. Instead, it would cause the qi in the body to go berserk. He'd never heard of anyone eating raw treasures. Even if they did, they'd only eat it in small pieces or they'd explode. My friend's situation is different from normal people. This isn't a training treasure. But the situation right now was different. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was confident. Zhang Liju had mentioned that the fruit could be consumed directly, but there were a lot of side effects after ingesting it, such as weak body, short lifespan, inability to practice, and so on. Xiao Xiao was about to die, and it was good enough that she was still alive. Why would she care about being sickly and having a short lifespan? Where's your friend? Yu Bing asked curiously. She's in the car downstairs, frozen in an ice coffin. I'll bring her with me to the test. Lin Yi said. The only problem is, do I have the right to participate in the test? You all have an invitation, but I don't. The invitation is just a notice, you don't have to have one. Yu Bing shook his head and explained, as long as you have the right. Freelancers who hear about this can join the test as well. There's no special requirement for that. The main purpose of the Ice Palace's test is for the Ice Palace to earn money, and also to get more outer disciples. Earn money? Linny asked. To participate in the Ice Palace's trial, you need to pay a deposit of 100 million, and the deposit is non-refundable. Think about it, there are hundreds of people participating in the Ice Palace's trial. How much money would the Ice Palace earn? Yu Bing smiled. An ancient sect like the Ice Palace doesn't have the time to run a business, but how can they support such a huge business without money? So they use this method to earn money and become an outer disciple. For people like us, it might seem like a huge benefit, but it's actually just doing odd jobs in the Ice Palace. The core disciples of the Ice Palace have to focus on training, so they don't have time to do chores like boiling water, cooking and sweeping the floor. It's basically free labor. All they need to do is give them some pointers and give them some pills for training. Oh, so this Ice Palace really has it all planned out. Linny nodded. But there's nothing we can do about this, they don't force people to join the test and it's just like that. Yu Bing said, you need to pay 100 million deposit if you want to join the test, is that a problem? I'll think of something for you if there is. That's not a problem. Lin Yi shook his head. Now that Pingzhan had passed his predicament, it wouldn't be hard to borrow 100 million from him. If not, there were still House Lu and House Wu who were close to him. Alright, one more thing, I think my cousin Yushan will be in a team with those two from House Zhao fighting the outsiders together. Should we be in a team then? Yu Bing invited Lin Yi. No problem. Lin Yi nodded, but we're a bit weaker than them. Your brother Yushan is a mystic mid-phase peak, right? How do you know? Yu Bing was surprised, he didn't think that Lin Yi would know Yushan's strength, even able to tell that he was close to mystic mid-phase peak. After all, Yushan was only mystic mid-phase, not mystic mid-phase peak yet. Can tell. Lin Yi smiled, you're mystic mid-phase peak and I'm mystic mid-phase peak as well. I've been showing signs of breaking through these few days but I haven't. Plus, the two from House Zhao are mystic mid-phase peak and mystic late phase. If we were to face each other in the test, we'd be at a disadvantage. I didn't think you'd know the opponent's strength so well and with such precision. Yu Bing was pleasantly surprised, he knew House Zhao's Zhao Qikuan's strength, but he didn't know the strength of that Zhao Qijio beside him. He was just about to ask around when Lin Yi found out about it first. School Beauty's Personal Expert 147. Chapter 1474. Chapter 1472, Shao Ning's Secret, but Zhao Qikuan's follower is actually a mystic late phase, that's not good. Yushan won't let go of any chance to humiliate me. How about this, you go alone. Since your goal is only the fruit, you don't need to get involved with me, I don't want to drag you into this. Yu Bing's heart started pounding after hearing Zhao Qijio's strength. After all, the difference between him and Lin Yi was too big. Even if Lin Yi really did break through to mystic late phase, he'd just broken through. Compared to someone who'd already broken through, they were at a disadvantage. Plus there was Yushan, a mystic mid-phase peak. If he were to face Zhao Qikuan and Lin Yi were to face Zhao Qijio with Yushan ambushing them from the side, who could handle that? Oh, but don't worry, I have a trump card. Lin Yi said. Even if it's an earth class, I have a chance to heavily injure him, so don't talk about this anymore. Since we're fated to meet again, we'll still be a team. Are you serious? You can heavily injure an earth class. Yu Bing's eyes went wide. But aren't you a little too strong? No wonder Ning likes you, you're a super scion. Let's not talk about that. Lin Yi interrupted Yu Bing. Some things were in the past and it wasn't easy to start over again. Although it wasn't that easy to forget and it was even more profound, Lin Yi didn't have the courage to bring it up again. Lin Yi, on the other hand, had found his own happiness. Tang Yun and Xiao Xiao, if he could stay with them for the rest of his life, that would be a kind of happiness. As for other things, there was no need to force it. Between him and the hidden House Yu, there seemed to be enmity from the beginning, and it was impossible to mediate until now, unless Yu Ning's father could let go of the hatred of the secular House Yu and accept Lin Yi. But someone as proud as Lin Yi, even if he went to the hidden House Yu, he might not get along well. This was what Yu Ning wanted. Lin Yi couldn't give it in the past and he still couldn't give it now. The two of them had grown up in different environments, and Yu Shaochen wasn't a reasonable person either. This meant that the two of them wouldn't end up together. So instead of being disappointed, It was better to have nothing. You don't like Ning? Yubing didn't end the topic. So what if I like it? So what if I don't? Lin Yi asked back. If you like it I can help, Yubing said. Help? You're too naive. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Do you think there's a chance of resolving the conflict between me and House Yu? At least you didn't offend the hidden House Yu. Yubing said sincerely. If you really want to, I can really work hard. Actually, there are some things that you don't know, but I can feel it from what your father told me. I can also see some problems. Lin Yi sighed. I don't know if you've noticed it, but your House Yu values her more than you do. Yubing didn't want to admit it, but he had to admit that Lin Yi's words had hit the nail on the head. Yes, in House Yu Yuning's position. She was more important than him, a direct descendant. The old ancestor of House Yu loved Yuning to an extent that it was even more than normal doting. The way his grandfather looked at Yuning was like he saw the future of House Yu, the glory of House Yu. But when he looked at him and Yushan, he wouldn't look at Yushan like that, only sternness. I don't know what secrets she has, but I feel that she... Before Lin Yi could finish, Yubing subconsciously covered Lin Yi's mouth. Yubing jumped in fright, but then he remembered that they were in an inn, not House Yu. This was an inn, not House Yu. He couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile. I'm sorry, it's just a reflex. What's wrong? Lin Yi was confused by Yubing's actions. I asked my father curiously, just like you, about Ning, but he told me sternly that I'm not allowed to ask or talk about it anymore. Yuning is a taboo in House Yu, no one dares to talk about it. Yubing shrugged. I subconsciously thought that we were at House Yu, so I was afraid that someone might hear us. So that's how it is. Lin Yi sighed. So, there are some things that we shouldn't think about. But you're not weak now, Yubing said. You've actually become a mystic mid-phase peak and you're about to break through to the late phase. I really didn't expect that. Our house has treasures that can be used to make training pills, but you probably don't have them. I have my own way of training, Lin Yi said. Strength isn't the key is that I just defended your house. Yubing paused. This is a qi gathering pill, I got it from someone called Elder Yu. Lin Yi took out a small bottle and put it in front of Yubing. Qi gathering pill. Yubing's eyes were wide open as he stood up with a whoosh, looking at the bottle in disbelief. Lin Yi's move had shocked him to the point where he couldn't believe it. It wasn't just because it was a qi gathering pill, but also because he got it from Elder Yu. Yubing's face changed. Naturally, he knew what a qi gathering pill was, and he knew that House Yu had sent Yu Huixing to steal it from the tomb, but he didn't think that the reason why Huixing couldn't find the pill was because it was stolen by Lin Yi. Yubing's first thought wasn't on how to get the pill back. Although his father needed it, Yubing knew that this was the rule of the martial world. This pill didn't belong to Yu Huixing, it belonged to the tomb master, and so it belonged to whoever got it first. It didn't belong to anyone, so there was no way to get it back. What Yubing thought of was that Lin Yi trusted him the most. This was a secret that involved House Yu, and Lin Yi was able to tell him so directly. This touched Yubing a little. Otherwise, Lin Yi could have just not told him this and he wouldn't have known. Do you think that the hatred between us can be resolved? Lin Yi looked at Yubing's expression and felt gratified. There was no anger, no greed, only shock and helplessness. Lin Yi wasn't wrong about him. Lin Yi wanted to test Yubing's character and thought even if Lin Yi didn't take it out now, if they really couldn't find the fruit in the test, then this qi gathering pill would become the pill Lin Yi used to exchange for the fruit with the Ice Palace. Chapter 147, School Beauty's Personal Expert. Chapter 1475. Lin Yi couldn't think of anything else he had that could tempt the Ice Palace. One fruit could be bought with money, but the Ice Palace probably wouldn't sell it to Lin Yi, and he'd have to use a qi gathering pill to exchange for one. At that time Yubing would see the qi gathering pill as well and he'd think of what happened to Elder Yu. So instead of letting him suspect, he might as well tell the truth. Of course, Lin Yi didn't know that Elder Yu hid the fact that the pill was stolen from him, and lied that he didn't find it. It's not us, it's you and my father. But it belongs to whoever got it, there's no grudge, Yubing said. But you're quite strong, I finally understand why you said you had the confidence to take on an Earth class. Too bad, my father was just one step away from breaking through to Sky class. I was planning to use this pill to exchange for the fruit, so I'm sorry I can't give it to you. I know how important this is to your family, but I need it too. Lin Yi said. But I left one for Elder Yu, isn't it for your father? There's someone from House Yu who's breaking through to Sky Class? What? You left one for him? Yu Bing paused. You're saying that Elder Yu has another chi gathering pill with him? Yeah, why you didn't know? Lin Yi looked at Yu Bing strangely. Didn't he tell you? No. Yu Bing took a deep breath, a dark look flashing across his face. It seems like the practitioners from the Common World House Yu are not on the same side as us. He's been hiding the pill. Common House Yu? You mean, Elder Yu is from the Common House Yu? Could it be Yu Shuixing's big brother? That Earth class. Lin Yi blinked. Yes, it's him. Yu Bing laughed coldly. This time you don't have to worry. If Yu Huixing really took the pill for himself, then we, the Hidden House Yu, wouldn't need to support the Common House Yu anymore, and the conflict between you and the Hidden House Yu would be resolved. The problem isn't this, it's Xiao Ning herself. Lin Yi didn't want to mention this name, but since things had reached this point he couldn't avoid it. Your family's expectations of her are too high, and your expectations of me are too low. I don't know if all this can be changed in the future. But at least not now, and I already have a girlfriend. You already have a girlfriend? Yu Bing was shocked. He only paid attention to Lin Yi's recent actions in Songshan, making enemies with so many powerhouses, but he didn't really care about Lin Yi's private life. So when Lin Yi brought it up, Yu Bing's heart sank. He didn't know if his sister would be able to accept this news. But Yu Bing couldn't blame Lin Yi for anything. After all, Lin Yi didn't give his sister any promises back then. It was all her wishful thinking. At first, Yu Bing even thought that his sister had grown up in the family and hadn't seen much of the world. So when she saw Lin Yi for the first time she would fall for him, but after returning to the family for a while or meeting other outstanding men, she would forget about Lin Yi. But that wasn't the case. As he interacted with Lin Yi more, Yu Bing realized how amazing Lin Yi was. Especially this time Yu Bing really admired Lin Yi. He actually dared to do anything, snatching food from the tiger's mouth from an Earth class. Even with Yu Bing's background he wouldn't dare to do something like this. But Lin Yi did it and he succeeded. He couldn't compare to this level of skill. Yes, I have. Lin Yi nodded. And there's two. Lin Yi didn't try to hide it. His goal was to tell Yu Ning through Yu Bing's mouth. He wanted her to know that not only did he have a girlfriend, but he was also a playboy. People like her would definitely give up. But Lin Yi's goal didn't seem to be achieved. Not only that, but it also made Yu Bing feel relieved. He thought that Lin Yi was a rigid person. But now he realized that he wasn't. Since Lin Yi had two girlfriends he didn't need his sister. Although it seemed like his sister was at a disadvantage, but if Lin Yi was a rigid person, then he wouldn't be able to lose even if he wanted to. The reason why Yu Bing didn't think it was a big deal was because he was born in a hidden house. In hidden houses, it was normal to have 3 or 4 wives. Unless the wife was very strong and had a strong background such as a marriage alliance, he would only have one wife. For example, the current head of House Zhao Guangyin, only had one wife, Yu Shaojin. But although Zhao Guangyin only had one wife in name, he had an illegitimate child outside. This was no secret. Yu Bing's father also found 2 concubines, but they didn't have any children. Yu Bing was very open about this. He didn't think there was anything wrong with it. There's already 2 of them? Then one more isn't a big deal. Ning should be at ease now. He still has a chance. Yu Bing smiled. Lin Yi heard Yu Bing's words and almost fainted. He realized that his words didn't make Yu Bing give up. Instead, it strengthened his confidence. What was the philosophy of the Hidden House Yu? What's wrong? Yu Bing looked at Lin Yi and didn't understand. It's nothing. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Other than me, what other allies does House Yu have? House Yu we do. House Yu is related to the Hidden House Xiao by marriage, but the one who came this time isn't the direct grandson of House Xiao. It's Xiao Qikun. He's with my cousin Yu Shan now. They're obviously forming an alliance. Yu Bing smiled bitterly. Every house has its problems, so other than you, I really don't know who else I can form an alliance with. It's nothing. Let's go out and take a look at the other houses then. Even if we can't form an alliance with them, we can at least form a good relationship with them. If we can't, then we'll let them know how strong we are and make sure they don't mess with us in the test. Lin Yi's goal was simple. If they couldn't be friends, then they shouldn't be enemies. But if there were people who were hostile, then Lin Yi didn't mind teaching them a lesson right now in case they caused trouble during the test. This was what Zhao Qikuan did back then, but after listening to Yu Bing's words, Lin Yi and Zhao Qikuan couldn't be allies anymore. His instincts told him that House Zhao wouldn't make things difficult for him because of Zhao Qibing. Even if he did, it wouldn't matter. He could tell what he was planning from the way he tried to form an alliance with Yushan. Chapter 1476. But this was an internal problem between House Zhao and House Yu. It had nothing to do with Lin Yi. The day of the Ice Palace test was getting closer and closer, so there were more people coming to the inn today. When Lin Yi and Yu Bing left the inn, they saw a few more cars coming from afar, evidently heading towards the inn as well. I wonder which hidden house they are from. Lin Yi stood at the entrance of the inn and looked at the cars from afar. I'm not sure yet, but they might not all be from hidden houses. They might be from sects. Yu Bing shook his head. Yu Bing shook his head. I heard that there are people from the ancient sects participating this time. I wonder if it's true. House Yu's information network was quite fast, especially since the old head of House Yu hadn't gone into isolation yet. Yu Bing knew much more than others. At the very front of the group was a red Porsche Cayenne, evidently not from the same group as the cars behind it. This car was the fastest, and in a blink of an eye, it was not far from Lin Yi. With a beautiful drift, it stopped in the parking lot. I wonder whose brother this is. Is it because he has no experience, or is it because of his flamboyant personality? People like him make enemies easily, Yu Bing said to Lin Yi as he watched the car. They were here to participate in the test, not to act cool. If they did, they might offend other people. After all, everyone's starting point was the same and their strength was about the same as well. No one was weaker than the other. If he had the strength, then he could be cocky for a bit, but I wonder how strong he is. Lin Yi nodded. As the two spoke, the door of the red Cayenne opened. The one who got out of the car was a cool girl wearing a tight black leather jacket. A girl? Yu Bing paused. Those who came to participate in the test were usually men, and there were very few women. After all, most of the noble houses valued men more than women. They thought that only men could inherit the family business, and it was rare to see families like House Yu who valued a girl like Yu Ning. However, this test wasn't suitable for Yu Ning, so they sent him and Yushan here. Why was she here? When Lin Yi saw the cool girl, his eyes widened. No way. He came too? Could it be that assassins could also participate in this trial? Besides, didn't they have to be mystic class masters to participate? Thinking of this, Lin Yi looked at the cool girl with some doubts. Lin Yi could be sure that there were no fluctuations of true qi in the body of the cool girl. Could it be that she was a physical expert? Yang Qiqi didn't say anything after getting off the car, not even glancing at Lin Yi as she entered the inn. Lin Yi pondered for a moment, but in the end he did not greet her. From Lin Yi's point of view, this girl didn't even know much about martial arts. If he recruited her into his team, he wouldn't even be able to take care of her, let alone help him and Yu Bing. Therefore it was best for Lin Yi not to provoke such a person. She looks like a pretty girl. Just a little cold. Yu Bing looked at Yang Qiqi's back as she walked into the inn. Pretty girl is real, just a little troublesome. Lin Yi shrugged and didn't deny it. You know her? Lin Yi's answer surprised Yu Bing. I don't really know her, but I've met her before. She was injured both times, and after I saved her she said that I saw her body and wanted to kill me. You still want to kill me? Lin Yi said helplessly. Huh. Yu Bing laughed. No way? Then you have no choice but to accept her? It'll be troublesome if I accept her. Lin Yi shook his head. As they were talking, several other cars also arrived, but it was obvious that several cars seemed to be surrounding one car as they drove over. Lin Yi counted, there were 4 cars in total with different license plates, but the Hummer in the middle had a license plate from a city near Songshan. The cars stopped one after another. A few people got off from the other 3 cars and came to the side of the Hummer. They were almost phoning as they fought to open the doors of the Hummer. After a while, 2 legs came out of the Hummer. This is even more pretentious than before. Yu Bing was speechless, but this one has some strength. I know 2 of the people beside the Hummer and they're from the hidden house. It's an expert from the hidden house of Shuang. To be able to make them bow and scrape like this person shouldn't be from a hidden house or a normal sect. If I'm not wrong, this person should be from an ancient sect. Ancient sects are here too? Lin Yi was surprised. But isn't the Ice Palace an ancient sect too? Why are there people from other ancient sects here? As far as I know, ancient sects can join each other's tests as well, but they don't have to pay a high deposit like us. They're here for friendly reasons, just to train their juniors. But the last Ice Palace test didn't have this rule. It was set by another ancient sect. It seems like the Ice Palace is copying them this time, Yu Bing explained. I see. Lin Yi nodded. With the disciples from the ancient sects joining in, the fairness of the test will be clearly skewed. You can see it from their attitude towards the disciples from the ancient sections. Yeah. Yu Bing smiled bitterly. These ancient sect disciples might not be that strong, but they're famous, and some of the hidden house disciples like to suck up to them. This was the first time Naipeo experienced what it felt like to be a boss. He didn't think that the ancient sect's name would be this popular, especially since he was an inner disciple of the Everyday and Everyday sect. He was the target of all the hidden house disciples. Although the Everyday and Everyday sect didn't have a good reputation among the ancient sects and was called a demonic sect, their strength was tyrannical. Especially the old ancestor of the sect, he was in existence at the peak of the late phase of the heaven rank. Ordinary heaven rank powerhouses wouldn't pay attention to him. This was why Naipeo, who was only a mystic mid-phase peak, had so many hidden house disciples fawning over him. Chapter 1477. He'd once lent a helping hand to Naipeo in his family's darkest hour. Plus, Lin Yi was Naipeo's enemy. Thinking back to how he'd been stepped on by Lin Yi back then, Naipeo felt a wave of humiliation. He was the disciple of the Everyday and Everyday sect, the one that the sect leader and elder valued the most, and yet he'd been stepped on by Lin Yi, a small fry from the common world. If he didn't get his revenge, he'd feel sorry for his sect. And so he trained hard day and night, daring to try things that others didn't dare to try. Pain that others couldn't, he could. Poisonous bees, bugs, snakes, weeds. Zhang Naipeo was willing to do anything for the sake of training. The training methods of the demon sects were different from the other righteous sects. The other righteous sects used qi from heaven and earth for their own use. But the demon sects used all sorts of evil methods to convert poison and evil qi into their own strength. Naipeo's chrysanthemum arts, on the other hand, had already reached the first stage, becoming the fastest practitioner in the sect. There was actually a story behind this chrysanthemum art. It was said that it was passed down from the ancient Chiyu god, but this art was too evil and tyrannical, and was despised by the righteous sects of the Wuling world. They worked together to destroy it. Many years later, a demonic sect suddenly rose up in the martial arts world. It was the Everyday and Everyday sect. This sect used the chrysanthemum treasured book as their sect's treasure. The sect's mental cultivation method was also similar to the chrysanthemum treasured book. It used corpse energy, fresh blood, dead people, and poisonous substances to cultivate. A sect like this naturally would be attacked by other sects, but because of the speed and strength of the practitioners from the Everyday and Everyday sect, in the end they ended up in a draw. It was only a draw and no one could do anything to the other. In this way they would mind their own business and mind their own business. But for a demon sect like the Everyday and Everyday sect, many ancient sects would stay away from them. But there were exceptions like the Ice Palace. The Ice Palace was a powerful existence even among the ancient sections. The palace master of the Ice Palace was as powerful as the ancestor of the Everyday and Everyday sect. As for the people of the Ice Palace, they were as cold as their name suggested. They treated everyone and anything coldly. Over the years, the Ice Palace he didn't have a good relationship with the other ancient sections. However, he didn't reject the disciples of the other ancient sects who came to participate in the trial. However, the Ice Palace had the right to be indifferent. Even so, the other ancient sects had to welcome the Ice Palace with a smile. Before Naipeo came to the test, his master had already told him that he wouldn't be able to deal with the others. They could pretend to be arrogant to show off the Everyday and Everyday sect's superior status, but they had to welcome the people from the Ice Palace with a smile, because the Ice Palace's strength was no weaker than the Everyday and Everyday sect. However, although the Everyday and Everyday sect had the chrysanthemum treasured book, no one else cultivated it. The reason was that the chrysanthemum grimoire was too evil. If one didn't castrate oneself, one who wasn't resolute enough would be trapped by it and fall into qi deviation. Previously there were a few disciples who had cultivated it, but all of them died from qi deviation. These disciples were the ones who the elders of the sect had thought to be the most talented, but none of them had succeeded. Only Naipeo didn't even think twice about castrating himself. He castrated himself without thinking. This was something that had never happened before. After all, which one of these disciples wasn't young? Which one of them wanted to become a eunuch? They all wanted to leave the mountain and enjoy the life of women. There was no way they'd do something as stupid as leave the ice palace. And so, even if the chrysanthemum treasured book was very strong, it was praised by the elders of the sect as being as powerful as the legendary art of dragon mastery, but very few people practiced this powerful art. The chrysanthemum grimoire had a special characteristic, and that was that it could transform all kinds of evil and poisonous things into demonic energy in one's body. It belonged to the omnipotent mental cultivation method, and was not restricted by any cultivation method. It was unlike the other mental cultivation methods that the other people in the sect practiced, which could only use poisonous grass, poisonous insects to replenish yang, or blood-sucking and so on. Naipeo, on the other hand, didn't have to do that. He used whatever he had, and even if others didn't, he could use it. This way he'd have more resources and his training speed would naturally be faster than others. Naipeo got off the car with everyone around him, putting on his sunglasses. Master Pao is so handsome. Truly a master of the young generation. A disciple from a hidden house said. Of course, Master Pao is from the ancient sect. He's as lucky as the heavens. Another disciple from a hidden house said. Humph, that girl doesn't give face to Master Pao. I think she's tired of living. The one speaking was a disciple from House Zhuang, called Zhuang Niapeo. His name was quite similar to Naipeo's, and so he used this as an excuse to get close to Naipeo. The other disciples from the hidden houses all got to know Naipeo through him. Yeah, Master Pao, do you want us to capture that girl and send her to your room tonight? Another disciple from House Zhuang said, that girl doesn't give face to Master Pao. If we don't teach her a lesson, she won't know who Master Pao is. Master Pao, that girl's pretty. Play with her for a bit, it'll be a warm-up for the test. Another disciple from a small sect said. He was thinking that once Naipeo got bored of her, he'd have a taste of her. After all, he'd have Naipeo, an ancient sect disciple, to back him up. He wasn't afraid of anything. No need, I'm not interested in her. Naipeo waved his hand nonchalantly. People like her who only know how to act cool, we'll just teach her a lesson during the test. Naipeo was speaking the truth. He really wasn't interested in Chi-Chi. He was a eunuch. What interest could he possibly have in a girl? But this was a secret. He wouldn't just tell anyone. I see. The disciple who suggested said, a little disappointed. As they spoke, Lin Yi had a look of disbelief on his face. This was the second familiar face he'd run into after Chi-Chi. He didn't expect to run into Zhang Naipeo here. Since when did Naipeo become a practitioner? And he even became a cultivator of an ancient sect. Chapter 1478. This guy sure knows how to act. Even if the ancient sects are strong, there's no need to do this, right? Yu Bing frowned as he watched Naipeo's actions. Mystic mid-phase peak. Linny was shocked. Naipeo, who used to be Pinliang's follower, now had the same strength as him. Although the energy in Naipeo's body couldn't be considered pure qi, it was still very strong. Looking at it carefully, it felt familiar. Lin Yi seemed to have seen this kind of qi before, but it wasn't complete qi. This qi could increase one's strength, but it was different from normal practitioners. Just like the energy in his own body, it was different from pure qi. But Lin Yi was sure that the qi in Naipeo's body wasn't his own. It was a type of qi, not an all-purpose energy. As for which type it was, Lin Yi couldn't be sure. Mystic mid-phase peak? Yu Bing paused. This strength isn't much in the ancient sects, right? Thought he was mystic late-phase peak. Huh. But did you know? 2 months ago he was still a normal person. Lin Yi smiled bitterly, finding it hard to believe. What? 2 months ago he was still a normal person? Yu Bing's eyes were wide open. How is that possible? He's my classmate. Do you think it's possible? Lin Yi was helpless as well. Ancient sects are that strong? How can they allow a normal person to increase their strength so quickly? Ancient sects. It doesn't mean that they are sects that have existed since the ancient times, but the mental cultivation methods they cultivate are mostly passed down from the ancient times. These inner force mental cultivation methods are very powerful, much more powerful than the mental cultivation methods that we, the hidden aristocratic families and the aristocratic families, cultivate. So it's not impossible, Yu Bing explained. It's just that we don't know about it. To be honest, I'm shocked as well, but remembering that he's from an ancient sect, it makes sense. At that moment, Nai Peo and the others were already walking towards the entrance of the inn. Nai Peo, on the other hand, saw Lin Yi and Yu Bing at the side of the entrance. At that moment, Nai Peo stopped, his eyes filled with shock as he stared at Lin Yi's face. Naturally, he ignored Yu Bing, who was beside him. Who was Yu Bing and what did he do? To Nai Peo, that wasn't important. The important thing was, why was Lin Yi here? Liang Bro had said that Lin Yi was already a mystic when he visited him last time, so it was normal for him to join the Ice Palace test. As for which house or sect he belonged to, that was something Nai Peo didn't need to know. He only needed to know that he was from the Everyday sect, one of the top sect in the ancient sects. It didn't matter if Lin Yi was from a hidden house or a small sect. None of that mattered, their statuses were no longer equal. Even if he killed Lin Yi in front of everyone here, no one would dare speak up for him, no one would dare stand up for him. Going against him was the same as going against the entire Everyday sect. Lin Yi's eyes met with Nai Peo's. Their eyes met. There were no sparks. In Nai Peo's heart he hated Lin Yi, but with his current status he had enough power to take care of Lin Yi. There was no need for him to get angry. His heart was filled with disdain. Lin Yi, on the other hand, he was shocked at how fast Nai Peo leveled up, but as far as Lin Yi was concerned, he was still the same Nai Peo that he could step on whenever he wanted. A mystic mid-phase peak the same as him, it sounded like they were on par. But Lin Yi had a trump card that could even take on an earth class. Why would he be afraid of someone on the same level as him? So in Lin Yi's heart, there wasn't even disdain, only indifference. The two didn't say anything and just stared at each other. The people around Nai Peo were confused by his actions. Master Pao, what's wrong? I saw an old acquaintance, I'll go greet him. Nai Peo said faintly. Although he could have anyone around him help him against Lin Yi, he didn't do that. How could he show off his power like that? One day he would step on Lin Yi with his own hands. This was his promise to Pin Liang and he had to keep it. Zhuang Nia Peo paused. He could tell that Nai Peo's words were a little weird, but he didn't know what Nai Peo meant. He could only follow behind Nai Peo towards Lin Yi, not daring to make a decision himself. Isn't this Lin Yi, Boss Lin? What are you doing here instead of showing off in school? Nai Peo looked at Lin Yi and said mockingly, this isn't a place you should be, it's very dangerous and you could die at any moment. Mystic mid-phase peak? Sounds strong. Lin Yi said as he looked at Nai Peo. Nai Peo was taken aback by the fact that Lin Yi was able to point out his strength. From Lin Yi's tone it seemed like he didn't care. Could it be that he was an even stronger master? With that thought, Nai Peo raised his guard. But that wasn't right. This Ice Palace test had a clear strength limitation. One had to be a mystic, which meant that even if you were golden class late phase peak, you couldn't participate even if you were about to break through. At the same time, even if you just broke through to Earth class a minute ago, you couldn't participate either. So, Lin Yi was definitely a mystic as well. As for what level, Nai Peo didn't care because he had a trump card. As long as the opponent wasn't beyond mystic, he had confidence that he could win. Even if it was an Earth class early phase, he would be able to put up a fight. He might get injured, but it was more than enough to stay alive. This was also why Nai Peo was valued by the elders of the sect. It had been many years since there was a disciple as hardworking and brave as Nai Peo in the sect. Strong or not, you'll know once you try. Nai Peo smiled coldly. But too bad that Liang Bro isn't here. He'd be able to see how I kill you. It'd be very satisfying. You haven't forgotten about Pin Liang's revenge, have you? Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. No matter how strong you are, you're still Pin Liang's dog. Dog or follower, it doesn't matter, Lin Yi. I'll let you live today and I'll kill you the next time I see Liang Bro. You may be spared from death today, but you can't escape punishment. Nai Peo suddenly sent a palm towards Lin Yi. Chapter 1479. Lin Yi didn't think that Nai Peo would make the first move here, but Lin Yi had no reason to dodge. Since that was the case, he might as well teach Nai Peo a lesson. Killing Nai Peo, on the other hand, was something Lin Yi didn't think about, at least not here. Lin Yi's goal here was to find the fruit for Xiao Xiao, and the Ice Palace's trial was probably the only way for him to get it. He didn't want to cause any problems before the trial started, in case the Ice Palace used him killing Zhang Naipeo as an excuse to reject him from the trial. It wouldn't be worth it if the Ice Palace used him killing Zhang Naipeo as an excuse. The current Lin Yi was no match for the Ice Palace at all. So, even if he wanted to kill Naipeo, it would be during the test, not now. Seeing Naipeo's palm coming at him, Lin Yi didn't dodge at all. He quickly channeled the art of dragon mastery and met Naipeo's palm head-on. The two palms collided and a crisp ping sound was heard. The Zhuang brothers beside Naipeo, as well as the other disciples of the hidden houses, all cheered excitedly when they saw Naipeo's attack. Master Pao is invincible. Master Pao is invincible, unparalleled. Master Pao rules the world, unifying the world. The cheers came one after another, and on Lin Yi's side Yu Bing was frowning, worried for Lin Yi. After all, Naipeo's title as an ancient sect worried Yu Bing. The ancient sects were even stronger than the hidden houses. Even if House Yu had 2 sky-class masters, they wouldn't dare say they were on par with the ancient sections. Even the weakest ancient sects had sky-class late-phase peak masters in their ranks. It wasn't something the hidden house you could compare with. Hearing the cheers from Naipeo's followers, Yu Bing was even more worried. After all, these people might know Naipeo's strength, otherwise they wouldn't have such high hopes for him. This wasn't cheering at all, it was blind flattery. Qi flowed through Lin Yi's palms towards Naipeo, but Lin Yi didn't feel Naipeo's qi retaliate at all. Naipeo didn't get blown away like the others, instead looking at her with a smile on his face. What was going on? Lin Yi vaguely felt that something was wrong. Why did his palm feel like it was hitting cotton? There was no effect at all when he used his true qi? Could it be that this Zhang Naipeo knew some sort of defensive arts? Thinking of this, Lin Yi hurriedly increased the strength of his true qi. In order to test Naipeo's strength as well as not wanting to kill him in one hit, Lin Yi only used around 50% of his true qi. But now Lin Yi increased his true qi to 100%. Naipeo wasn't affected at all but started laughing instead. Lin Yi's heart sank. Strange. The kung fu of the ancient sects was indeed powerful. The people from the aristocratic families and the hidden aristocratic families. They weren't on the same level at all, just one Zhang Naipeo was already this strong, and it made Lin Yi feel like he couldn't do anything about it. Lin Yi didn't want to keep fighting, and decided to dodge first before looking for an opening. After making up his mind, Lin Yi quickly stopped his true qi and stopped his arts. He wanted to pull his palm away from Naipeo, but the next moment something strange happened. To Lin Yi's shock, his palm seemed to have been sucked into Naipeo's palm. He couldn't pull it away no matter how hard he tried. And this wasn't the worst. What shocked Lin Yi even more was yet to come. He'd stopped channeling the art of dragon mastery, but the energy in his body was still flowing through his palms into Naipeo's body. The art of dragon mastery, on the other hand, was operating on its own. What kind of demonic practitioner's arts is this? Lin Yi looked at Naipeo shocked. Lin Yi felt like he couldn't control this feeling. Just like that time when he transferred his true qi into Xiao Xiao, he was the one who initiated the art of dragon mastery, but then it was forced to circulate on its own, and the true qi in his body was leaking out. This is an evil arts, called the chrysanthemum art of wasp absorption. What do you think? You've never heard of it, have you? Naipeo looked at the shocked look on Lin Yi's face and started laughing heartily. Just as he expected, all of Lin Yi's strength was absorbed by him. And this was Naipeo's trump card. Naipeo's chrysanthemum art was an all-purpose energy conversion art, able to convert all the energy in the outside world into his own demonic qi for his own use. Poisonous bees, poisonous bugs, poisonous water, all sorts of powerful poisons could be used, and the true qi that other people worked so hard to cultivate could be used by him as well. This was also the evil part of this true qi. As long as the opponent was Naipeo's level or lower, they could use it. And now Naipeo was a mystic, which meant that as long as the opponent was a golden or mystic spiritual practitioner, he could use the chrysanthemum art of wasp absorption on them. It didn't matter if they were mystic early phase or late phase peak, as long as they weren't earth class, he could kill them all. Even if it was an earth class early phase, Zhang Naipeo could risk getting injured just to absorb some of the qi from the opponent. This was what made him so powerful. and the disciples of the hidden houses and sects who followed him were all fawning over him after seeing his strength. Otherwise, even if it was an ancient sect, it would be normal for them to befriend them, but there was no need for them to fawn over him like this. On the road, a hidden house practitioner who thought he was a mystic late-phase peak blocked Naipeo's path, and so Naipeo used him as a practice target without hesitation. Naipeo knew how powerful this chrysanthemum art of wasp absorption was, but this was a sect after all, and he couldn't use a fellow disciple as a practice target. And this unlucky mystic late-phase peak from a hidden house just happened to be the one who got sucked dry, losing all of his strength. Naturally, there weren't many people watching the fight between Naipeo and this mystic late-phase peak, and they saw how vicious Naipeo was. Chapter 1480. And because of that, Zhang Naipeo's name started to spread, and the disciples of the other hidden houses and sects all came to get close to him. One reason was because of the halo of an ancient sect, and the other was that Naipeo himself was very strong. That was why these people were doing this. The chrysanthemum arts that Naipeo was talking about was something that Lin Yi had never heard of before. He didn't know what it was, but it was true that Naipeo could absorb his qi. Even if Lin Yi stopped his arts, it wouldn't help. The qi was still flowing out of his body. No wonder your strength grew so fast. Lin Yi's eyes flashed coldly. Naipeo was too scary using such a dominating arts. This put a lot of pressure on Lin Yi. How should he deal with him? Lin Yi realized that he couldn't do anything to Naipeo at this point. He couldn't move his hand, and the qi in his body was draining rapidly as well. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before all his qi would go to Naipeo's side, and he'd become a normal person with no strength at all. Lin Yi had lost his strength many times before, and he wasn't afraid of it. As long as his meridians weren't broken, he had the jade space as his golden finger, and it would only take a night for him to recover his strength. But the problem was, wouldn't it be the same if he fought Naipeo again after he recovered? He'd be giving his qi to Naipeo for nothing. How's that? Shocked, right? Jealous, hateful? It's no use, I'm from an ancient sect and you're just a normal practitioner, Naipeo said happily as he looked at Lin Yi's face. My starting point is higher than yours, and my practitioner's arts are better than yours as well. My practitioner's arts are much better than yours too, Lin Yi. I sucked dry a mystic late-phase peak's qi on the road and I'm already showing signs of breaking through. Maybe I'll be able to break through after I suck dry your strength. I didn't think that I would be able to become a mystic late-phase master even before the trial. Lin Yi didn't say anything as he looked at Naipeo's smug face. There was no point in saying anything at this point. Lin Yi hadn't found a way to deal with him yet. In other words, he hadn't found Naipeo's weakness yet, so there was no point in saying anything. However, Lin Yi was unwilling. It hadn't been long and he'd already lost half of his qi. If this continued, he'd really be sucked dry by Naipeo. Lin Yi hesitated for a moment. He raised his leg and kicked at Naipeo's crotch. Lin Yi's plan was to catch Naipeo off guard, and when he was focused on absorbing his qi, he'd give him a kick that would heavily injure him and interrupt the chrysanthemum arts. Lin Yi would then use this opportunity to retract his palm. Bang! Lin Yi's leg hit Naipeo's crotch. But it didn't feel like he'd kicked anything. It didn't feel like he'd expected. You still dare to ambush me? Naipeo didn't think that Lin Yi would dare ambush him in a situation like this, but he didn't care. He laughed loudly. Perfect, thank you. One palm is too slow, I'll use your leg then. As soon as he finished his words, Lin Yi realized to his shock that he couldn't move his foot away from Naipeo's crotch. The qi in his body was being transferred to Naipeo from his foot. Your other body parts can absorb qi as well? Lin Yi paused. But it's too late. Naipeo said, so ambushing me is useless. Lin Yi, you can only watch as you become a cripple. There's no other choice. How is it, isn't it painful? You're about to become a normal person and all the qi you've worked so hard for will be sucked away by me, turning into the demon qi in my body for my use. Of course, Naipeo didn't know that Lin Yi would be able to recover. Normal people wouldn't be able to recover in a short period of time, they'd basically become a cripple. How much effort would it take to start from scratch? How many treasures and herbs would he need? Demon qi? You're not training qi? Lin Yi realized after hearing the words, it really wasn't qi in Naipeo's body. No wonder Lin Yi felt that he was different from other people. It's also a type of qi and the strength is the same as qi as well. It's just that the element is different. Naipeo wasn't impatient at all as he explained it to Lin Yi. As far as he was concerned, Lin Yi was about to become a cripple, so he might as well let him know before he died. I see, Lin Yi nodded. You're very strong this time. I admit defeat. Lin Yi had no choice but to admit defeat. He didn't want to, but it was the truth and Lin Yi couldn't deny it. After all, Lin Yi still hadn't found any weaknesses in Naipeo. Lin Yi had thought that since Naipeo's palm could absorb qi, he'd try to avoid contact with it after he recovered, and attack other parts of his body instead. But that plan was ruined after Lin Yi's kick. This time. You think there's a next time? Next time it'll be your death day. Naipeo laughed. As the hidden house disciples around Naipeo cheered, Yu Bing on the other hand was panicking. He'd wanted to join forces with Lin Yi against Naipeo, but after hearing the conversation between Naipeo and Lin Yi, he hesitated. Naipeo was a monster and even if Yu Bing attacked it wouldn't be of much use. He could absorb other people's qi and even if he went up he wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being absorbed. So Yu Bing didn't dare attack rashly. Plus, Lin Yi had secretly hinted at him with his eyes, telling him not to act rashly. But if it really was as Naipeo said and Lin Yi was crippled and turned into a normal person, then Lin Yi wouldn't be able to participate in this test anymore. What would happen to his friends then? Wouldn't it be impossible for them to get the fruit? With that thought, Yu Bing made up his mind. If Lin Yi really was crippled and turned into a normal person, then he'd help Lin Yi find the fruit and give it to Lin Yi. Chapter 1481. Yes. Zhuang Niapeo and the other disciples from the hidden houses and sects didn't care about Lin Yi anymore. They all ran to Zhang Naipeo's side and surrounded him, protecting him. Zhang Naipeo sat on the ground and a strong energy whirlpool formed around him, circling above his head. The demonic energy in his body moved the energy around him and gathered it together. It seemed like he was about to break through. As for Lin Yi, the disciples from the hidden houses and sects as well as Zhang Naipeo, didn't even look at him. In their eyes, Lin Yi was the same as that mystic late-phase peak master who was showing off on the road, a cripple. They didn't even want to think about this cripple, let alone look at him. Lin Yi's qi was sucked dry and he fell to the ground. Right now Lin Yi was even weaker than a normal person. After all, normal people still had energy in their body but Lin Yi had none at all. How are you? Yu Bing looked at Zhang Naipeo and the others not far away and asked Lin Yi anxiously. It's nothing. Help me back to my room. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile bitterly as he looked at Naipeo. This was the best time to deal with Zhang Naipeo. He was in the middle of breaking through and his defense was the weakest. If he were to attack him now he would be heavily injured. However, his followers were guarding him from the side, giving Lin Yi no chance at all. If Lin Yi was at his peak he could use an energy bomb to kill all of them and then deal with Zhang Naipeo. But now Lin Yi had no energy in his body at all. Where would he go to get an energy bomb? And Yu Bing wasn't a match for a group of mystic class masters. Letting him go would be suicide, so Lin Yi could only return to his room helplessly and think of a plan after recovering his strength. We're teammates but I can't take revenge for you, Yu Bing said with a little sadness and guilt as he looked at Lin Yi. He was indignant because he was helpless. He had no way to avenge Lin Yi. He felt guilty because, on one hand, Lin Yi was his former teammate friend and also his current teammate. On the other hand, it was because of Xiao Ning. If Xiao Ning knew about this. If he became a normal person and lost his strength, then the gap between him and Ning and the hidden house would only get bigger and bigger. His father Yu Shaochen would never allow Ning to marry a normal person. Even his grandpa wouldn't agree to it, let alone his father. It's nothing. Revenge must be taken. I'll do it myself. Lin Yi smiled and said, you don't need to have any psychological burden. But, you look like this. How can you take revenge? Yu Bing smiled bitterly, forget it. I'll help you back first. Under the disregard, Yu Bing helped Lin Yi to the entrance of the inn. This scene was witnessed by the owner of the inn, but he didn't stop them. He didn't say anything. He was from the Ice Palace as well, but the test hadn't started yet. The ice palace didn't need to be responsible for the safety of the participants, so he didn't need to interfere. Yu Bing helped Lin Yi back to his room and said hurriedly, "What do I do? What should I do now? Do you need any treasures? Tell me, I have a certain status in House Yu. Plus Xiaoning, as long as House Yu has what you want, I can get it for you." "No need." Lin Yi smiled gratefully. "Why do you need to go through so much trouble? You can go back, I'll rest for a bit." "Right. Don't worry too much, you don't have your strength anymore. We can train again. With me and Xiaoning supporting you secretly, you'll have a lot of treasures to make." Yu Bing consoled. He thought that Lin Yi was just comforting him. After all, he had lost all his strength, and to recover it would be as hard as reaching the heavens. This was the strength he had accumulated since he was young. It wasn't something that could be achieved in a day. But Lin Yi wasn't in a good mood right now, so he didn't want to talk too much. He needed some peace and quiet. "Thank you." Lin Yi nodded to Yu Bing with a smile. After Yu Bing left, Lin Yi quickly entered the Jade Space and started channeling the art of dragon mastery. The energy in the Jade Space surged into Lin Yi's body like crazy. Lin Yi was already used to this. As long as his meridians weren't damaged, recovering his strength and energy was only a matter of time. In Yu Bing's room, Yu Bing was holding the satellite phone in his hand with a bitter face. He didn't know if he should tell his sister about Lin Yi's injury, but if he didn't tell her, then he wouldn't be able to continue with his plan. He had to work with his sister. Otherwise, with his position in House Yu, he wouldn't be able to get that many treasures. With that thought, Yu Bing picked up the phone and called his sister's number. He didn't call the house phone but the cell phone, afraid that someone would hear the call. "Hello? Big brother?" Yuning picked up her phone strangely. When her brother participated in the trial, he would usually call home to report that he was safe and sound. Finally, he would look for her to say a few words. Why did he directly call her today? According to his calculations, today should be the day her brother arrived at Snowtown. Shouldn't he call home to report that he was safe? In fact, Yu Bing did want to call home to report that he was safe, but he met Lin Yi first, so he didn't have the time to do so. Now that something like this happened to Lin Yi, how could Yu Bing be in the mood to report that he was safe? He had to call his sister quickly to discuss a plan. If he could get his hands on some of the house's soul-gathering pills, that would be the best. The so-called soul-gathering pill was similar to the chi-gathering pill, but it was much less effective. The soul-gathering pill was a spiritual medicine for those below the mystic class to quickly increase their strength, but it wasn't that useful once they reached the mystic class. Back then, Yu Bing had to use a lot of soul-gathering pills to break through to the mystic class, but although it was a lower level than the chi-gathering pill, it was still expensive to make. Two of the family's medicine masters spent a lot of effort to make it. To be continued. High-speed text. Chapter 1482. In addition, the success rate was extremely low. The reason why it was called a pill was because these two people were only medicine masters, not alchemists. They could only mix herbs into pills, but they couldn't make them into pills. "It's me." Yu Bing smiled bitterly. Originally, he was going to tell Yuning the good news because he saw Lin Yi today. He believed that Yuning would be very happy after hearing the news, but now that the good news had turned into bad news, it was hard for him to explain it to his sister. After all, Lin Yi was injured in front of him, but he couldn't do anything. "What's wrong, big brother? From your voice, you don't sound too happy?" Yuning asked curiously. "There's bad news. Sis, after I finish, you have to hold on." Yu Bing hesitated. "What news? Why are you saying it's so scary? Big brother, what happened?" After Yuning heard it, her heart was nervous for no reason. "Did you encounter any trouble?" "It's not me. Sis, do you know who I met in the inn in Snowtown?" Yu Bing smiled bitterly. "Who?" Yuning paused and asked. Yu Bing said. "What? Did you see him?" Yuning was surprised and happy. "You met him? He also went to participate in the test." "No, you told me before there was bad news. Is it about him?" Yuning's heart subconsciously trembled. Could it be that something really happened to him? Yes. Yu Bing had called to tell Yuning the truth, so instead of stuttering, he might as well tell her the truth, and so he paused for a moment. After organizing his words, he told the whole story in detail to Yuning. "What? He lost all his strength. The opponent is a disciple of an ancient sect. Yuning was shocked after listening. She didn't blame her brother because as a member of the hidden house she knew what it meant to be an ancient sect. She also knew that if the opponent was as strong as her brother said, then even if her brother took action it would be useless. In this situation, he chose to endure it for now. It was right. After all, this wasn't the time to be impulsive. I'm really sorry, little sister. I can't do anything. Yu Bing smiled bitterly. I carry father's hope as well as House Yu's hope. I can't lose all my strength. I understand, but Yuning shook her head. She understood what her brother was thinking and naturally wouldn't say anything about it. When I heard that he was already a mystic mid-phase peak, I was very happy. But in the blink of an eye, he lost all his strength. This is also the reason why I called you. I wanted to hide it from you, not letting you know. I didn't want you to be sad. Yu Bing said. I need your help. If I want Lin Yi to recover his strength, I need a large amount of cultivation elixirs such as spirit gathering pills. House Yu can provide it, but the resources I can get are limited. You'll have to do the rest. But I'm not a cultivator. I've never asked for things like elixirs. Yuning paused. She felt that what Yu Bing said was feasible. If she could help Lin Yi recover his strength, she was willing to do anything. She would never forget what had happened on that Valentine's Day night. Her heart was tied to Lin Yi. However, Yuning wasn't an impulsive person. She knew her own situation. If she went to her house and asked for elixirs, the house would definitely be suspicious. Then the family would definitely be suspicious, so he had to be skillful. So we need to think of a way. But this happened so suddenly, I don't have any good ideas yet. Yu Bing smiled bitterly. I'm just telling you first, you should think about it too. All right, I'll think about it later. Yuning didn't dare to neglect Lin Yi's situation. She quickly nodded. All right, that's all for now. Don't let others know. I'll call home now to tell them that I'm safe. Yu Bing sighed. Although he felt bad, he still had to call home to tell them that he was safe. Brother. Yuning hesitated. What's wrong? Is there anything else? Yu Bing was about to hang up when he heard Yuning calling him. Can I talk to him? Yuning mustered up her courage and asked. Tomorrow. I'll try to talk to him. Right now he's resting in his room. I think he doesn't want others to know about this, so let's not disturb him? Yu Bing said. That's good too. Yuning nodded. She understood Lin Yi's current mood. No matter who it was, they would be unhappy if they lost their strength. But brother, help me tell him that no matter what, I will help him. Please believe me, I can do it. Even if I can't do it now. I will definitely be able to help him. Tell him not to give up on himself. Yuning was so excited that she almost said that she could inherit the cultivation from the ancient ruins. However, this was a top secret in House Yu. Other than Yuning, only the old ancestor and Yu Shaoqun knew about it. Even Yu Yi didn't know much about it. I understand. Yu Bing didn't ask anymore. He knew that his sister had a big secret, a secret that could revitalize House Yu. But since his father didn't want him to know, he didn't need to ask. That would only make things difficult for his sister. After all, this wasn't as simple as a brother-sister relationship. It was a violation of House Yu's rules. Yu Bing knew the severity of this. After calling his family to let them know that he was safe, Yu Bing didn't have the mood to talk to other people anymore. He laid on his bed and went to bed early. He couldn't sleep and his mind was a mess, but he didn't want to do anything else. Zhao Qikuan, Zhao Qijiao and Yushan had just finished eating and were walking back to the inn. It was already 3 in the morning and they were clearly drinking to their heart's content. They were all very happy. However, the 3 of them were half a step slower. In front of them there was another person, an ally that they had just recruited. But this ally's identity was definitely not simple. Otherwise, even Yushan, who came from the head of the hidden houses, wouldn't be so respectful. Nidian bro, with you joining us, our team will definitely get a heaven-defying result in this test. Zhao Qikuan was very excited. He actually had a connection with an ancient noble house. The benefits of this was self-explanatory. To be continued. High-speed text. Chapter 1483. One had to know that the ancient noble houses and ancient sects had the same status. They were one level higher than the hidden houses and normal sects. And this young man in front of him was from the ancient noble house Feng Nidian. His name was domineering, but he had the right to be domineering. With him in the team, Qikuan believed that he and Yushan would be able to pass the Ice Palace test without a hitch. You can't say that there are other ancient sects and ancient noble houses participating in the test. I'm not the only one. Nidian might have said that, but he didn't look humble at all. It was obvious that he had accepted Yushan's words. But we're all at the same level as the ancients, we'll give each other some face. That's right, that's right. Not to be outdone, Yushan said, Big Bro Nidian's face is definitely bigger than ours. To have Big Bro Nidian join our team is the honor of 3 lifetimes. This time if anyone doesn't like it, Nidian Bro will kill them with his arts. Qikuan couldn't help but admire the words arts. Arts that defied the heavens, this was something that defied the heavens. Before, Feng Nidian had only shown a little of his skills, and it was enough to make Qikuan, Qijio and Yushan submit to him. Even if Nidian was from the ancient Feng house, Qikuan and the others wouldn't need to be so polite to him. They weren't on the same level and it was fine to be respectful, but there was no need to be too polite. Nidian was just a disciple here to participate in the test, he wouldn't be able to do anything for their families, so they were completely shocked by his performance. The level of the ancient sects and ancient aristocratic families was indeed very powerful. Hidden noble houses. They weren't even on the same level. Arts that defied the heavens were indeed very strong. Feng Nidian's arts were very strange. He could create a small field around him and the people in this field wouldn't be able to move at all. Although the area was small and the time limit was very short, Feng Nidian couldn't move at all. Nidian was at the 3rd level and he could only restrict people's movements for around 3 minutes, and the effective range was only around 3 meters, but that was more than enough. Think about it, even a super master wouldn't be able to move. Being locked in place and unable to move, wasn't that equivalent to sitting on the ground and waiting for death? This meant that Feng Nidian's arts were extremely powerful. Of course, in the Feng clan, besides the Feng clan's ancestor, only he had successfully cultivated this miraculous mental cultivation method. There were many requirements for cultivating this mental cultivation method. It was not something that ordinary people could achieve. As a result, Feng Nidian was highly regarded in the family. Other than training, he also wanted to make a name for himself. If he passed the test, his name would be even more famous in the house. In order to make preparations for him to smoothly become the young patriarch. After Nidian became the young master, the position of the head of the house would naturally fall into his father's hands. His uncle, who had the advantage now, would be kicked out of the competition. Of course, even if Feng Nidian didn't participate in this test, he would still be able to participate because of the Feng old ancestors' love for him. With his own cultivation, he could still become the head of the house, but he wouldn't have any outstanding achievements. The process would be slow and Feng Nidian didn't want to wait any longer. The more he looked at his uncle and his honest brother, the more he didn't like them. Therefore, as long as he could successfully pass this trial and become one of the top 3, he would be able to win some heavenly treasures for his family. Although the ancient Feng family didn't lack heavenly treasures, what he wanted was the honor, not the items. As for taking in a few followers to run errands for him, Feng Nidian, naturally, didn't mind sharing some of the merits with them. As far as Feng Nidian was concerned, as long as he used his heaven-defying arts on the test field, wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted? He would be able to hurt them if he wanted to, he would be able to steal their points if he wanted to. Getting the first place in the test was as easy as flipping his hand. Every time I use the heaven-defying arts, it consumes a large amount of qi. I can't use it as I please, I can only use it 3 to 5 times. Feng Nidian waved his hand, so, don't just sit around and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. In fact, with his current strength he could only use it 3 times at most. 5 times was basically impossible, but Feng Nidian was just bragging. That's more than enough. We'll see who gets the most points then and we'll use it if we can't win. Nidian bro, please go out and use your heaven-defying arts against him. Yushan said. That works too, it's also a form of training for you guys. Otherwise, I'll just attack and there'll be no point in the test anymore, Feng Nidian said, acting cool. Of course. Qikuan and Yushan nodded. The 4 returned to the inn and saw 6 people sitting in front of the door. 5 of them were surrounding one person as if they were meditating. What are they doing? Feng Nidian frowned and pointed at Zhang Naipeo. I don't know, knitting bro, I'll go ask? Yushan asked. Alright, go ahead and ask. Feng Nitin nodded. The chi here is thicker than other places, but it's not like they're training out in the open. Isn't it the same in the inn? You guys, what are you doing? With Feng Nitian's support, Yushan's arrogance was revealed and he wasn't as restrained as before. Zhuang Nipao and the others were focused on guarding when someone walked over and shouted, and they jumped up in fright. Although they were furious, they didn't want to disturb Master Pao's training, so they didn't say anything. Fuck, I'm talking to you guys, are you deaf? Can't you hear me? Yushan saw that these people were ignoring him and was pissed. Open your dog eyes and look, this is Nidian bro from the ancient noble house Feng. Why aren't you guys bowing to him? Seeing how arrogant this person was, Zhuang Nipao and Zhuang Niaoqiang couldn't sit still anymore. They wanted to stand up and teach this guy a lesson, but before they could stand up they heard what he said. What? Someone from the ancient Feng family? Zhuang Nipao was about to stand up and beat him up, but he quickly stood up and explained, I'm sorry, the disciple of the ancient sect everyday sect, Master Pao is training here and we're here to guard him. Although they had Zhang Nipao's support, they couldn't afford to offend an ancient noble house. To be continued. High-speed text. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.